check, it's 10 minutes past 6 p.m. So, wala na lang isang oras bago magsara ang tindahan at magsasara yung mga polling precincts. So, kung di pa kinakaboto, pwede pa kayong kumabol. So, remind to everybody, if you have not had a chance, go out and vote.
Because every vote counts, and like what the people on the internet say, papunta pa lang tayo sa exciting part.
May ganun pala.
Exactly. Trending yan. Because in a few minutes, voting, or rather, in just an hour, voting will start closing. Vote counting will begin. However, there seems to be a problem. We will get into that a bit later. I'm Regina.
And I'm Lingao. Welcome to the One News Election Data Monitoring Center, where we will give you the fastest breakdown of votes and deep dive analyses in this 43-hour continuing election coverage.
We are One News, and this is Bilang Pilipino 2022. All sides, all the time. COMELEC suspended the canvassing of votes for senator and party list groups. But for local positions, COMELEC may proclaim winners as early as tonight. Let's clarify this with Shyla Francisco coming to us live from Pasay City. Shyla, what's going on there?
Reg, Ed, just to clarify, the canvassing and transmission will continue. That's despite the COMELEC on bank as National Board of Canvassers suspending the session earlier today. To recall, they convened earlier at 3 p.m. as National Board of Canvassers to start or to prepare for the canvassing and proclamation of winning senators and party lists. What they suspended, however, was the formal proceedings or the session. So once canvassing or once a transmission of canvass votes from the certificate of canvass from the municipal and provincial canvassers enter these CCS or consolidation canvassing system, they will still process it. So just to clarify, what they suspended is just the session because it will take a bit longer for the CCS to get the provincial board of canvassers certificate of canvass because it will undergo this ladderized system. Reg, Ed?
Bok, just to clarify, so this suspension is just ministerial and a regular occurrence. In other words, the National Board of Canvassers will not officially be counting votes on the national level yet. Pero, and I think this is important for everybody concerned, pero the transmittal of the returns will still continue and we will still get the numbers as they come in the next few hours. Tama ba?
Ed, that's correct. The transmission to the transparency server and the COMELEC central server will continue. What was suspended was the session because if you recall, it started at 3 p.m. and the certificate of canvass won't get in or won't be submitted until maybe later tonight or tomorrow because as per COMELEC rules, they still have to wait for the Municipal Board of Canvassers to pass the COC to the provincial and to the National Board of Canvassers, unlike the transmission in the transparency server where they base the partial and unofficial results from the election returns. Ed?
Shai, can I just clarify one thing? This delay is caused by logistical issues, right? There is no other problem on the ground.
Raj, just to clarify, there is no problem at all. This is ministerial and they usually do this because obviously the transmission won't happen until they receive the certificate of canvass from the provincial board of canvassers. So they're just waiting for the results. That's why they suspended it until 1 p.m. tomorrow. But all in all, the transmission, the canvassing will remain as normal. Reg?
Okay, siguro just a little background for everybody concerned. My understanding, Shyla, you're listening, you can hear us naman, no? Just for clarity's sake, the individual vote counting machines transmit to the transparency server direct. But at the same time, they also have a ladderized system where the VCMs will also transmit to the provincial level. Is that correct? And these are the official numbers na.
Correct.
So it's a ladderized system going up to the provincial and then regional and the national.
Yes. Yes, that's correct. The National Board of Canvassers, which will proclaim the winning senators and party list, will have to wait for the certificate of canvass from the Provincial Board of Canvassers, which will have to wait for the results from the Municipal Board of Canvassers. So there's a ladderized system before the National Board of Canvassers here in Comelec can receive the certificate of canvass from the winning senators and party list. And Reg.
All right, thank you so much for that update. Charlotte Francisco coming to us live from Pasay.
The team of presidential candidate Bongbong Marcos is looking into reports of alleged incorrect results of votes in northern Luzon. Mobile journalist Julie Baisa with the details. Julie.
Okay, yes, we're here at presidential candidate Bongbong Marcos Jr.'s headquarters in Mandaluyong City. Currently, we're waiting for updates from his spokesperson, Attorney Vic Rodriguez, na anytime now ay magsasalita na since the camp claims that there are reports of incorrect results of votes in Northern Luzon. Sa press release ng Unity Book-Ed, sinabi nila na may ilang complainants from Narvacan, Santa Cruz, and Burgos, Ilocos Sur, and Intabuk City, Kalinga, who voted for BBM pero nang ipasok sa BCM at lumabas ang receipt, napunta daw ang boto kay Vice President Leni Robredo.
Okay, Julie, I asked you the same question kanina pero medyo hindi malinaw kanina yung audio natin. I'm hoping that this time we can get a clear answer from you. So may complaints of allegedly misread or misrepresented votes dapat for BBM pero nag-reflect daw is Leni Robredo sa resibo. What numbers are we talking about here? You've mentioned Narvacan in Ilocos Sur as well as Tabuk, the capital of Kalinga. Pero are these numbers significant o mangisang-isa lamang?
In Narvacan, isa lang Book-Ed, and then in Tabuk, Kalinga, merong dalawa.
So that's as far that's the most that we have right now.
Yes, yes. And ang COMELEC, sinabi yung sa Narvacan daw, walang naipakitang ebidensya. Ngayon, we're waiting for Attorney Vic kung meron siyang ipapakitang evidence or karagdagang ulat doon sa report na sinasabi nila.
Okay. I'm wondering lang kasi how they will prove that book because yes, you saw the receipt but you cannot take a picture of the receipt as the
But people have
voter.
been taking pictures of the receipts. That's a
Well,
problem,
there you go.
even though it's against the law.
That's
Because
against the
you're
law.
not supposed to take photos of the ballots and the receipts.
Yeah. So how do you well, Julie, sorry, I don't know if you have information on this, pero how exactly does one prove this? Would you know how Bongbong Marcos' camp intends to prove this allegation?
Actually, we're going to ask that to Attorney Vic. Since yung binigay nila sa atin ay press release lang, Bok, hindi pa natin sila nakakausap since dumating tayo dito sa headquarters.
And what's interesting is this happened up north, kung saan kahit paano it's Baluarte.
It is his bailiwick, very much so.
Ng,
But again,
Marcos
just to repeat, as Julie was saying, isa lang one case of this alleged irregularity in
Well, one or two
Narvacan
cases, yeah,
and
and-
two cases in Tumbok.
In
Tabuk.
In
Tabuk.
Tabuk, sa Kalinga. Okay, Julie, so keep us updated. What time do you expect the press conference to be held?
Nagsaset up na sila right now, Bok Ed.
O sige, timbre mo lang kami kagad as soon as you have something substantial and then ibato mo kagad, abangan namin.
All right, we will circle back to you, Julie Baiza. All right. Meanwhile, the campaign team and volunteers at the Leni Kiko headquarters are glued to their laptops, monitoring any significant incidents for the last few minutes of voting. About that, we have mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro to give us more details. Jacob, what is going on on the ground?
Hi, Reg. Hi, Ed. As you said, the people here are the volunteers and the camp of VP Leni Robredo. And even us media here are glued to our laptops and phones to observe and to monitor any significant development in this election. And, even though it's a very, very busy atmosphere, you can also feel the anxiety in the air as the election, as the voting period, draws near to an end. And, there are actually 100 volunteer lawyers here for Robredo who are managing the pink hotline where, voters can report or inquire about any election-related incidents. And so far, they have not yet received any serious concerns that would make them question the integrity of the elections. That's why, as I said earlier, they are confident that this will be a clean election.
Okay, Jacob, para lang klaro So what you're saying basically, kasi you're coming in after the report of Julie Baza where the Marcos camp is alleging incidents of anomalies doon sa reading ng balota. But from VP Lenny's camp, wala silang reklamo so far. Nothing substantial.
They have no such concerns or any complaints about that. But they did give a statement about that earlier. Robredo's lawyer, attorney Romulo Macalental, said that he could think of three possible scenarios that could explain this. First is that this could simply be a propaganda because he has questions about the veracity of such claims. And second, maybe the voters simply made a mistake, an honest mistake in shading the ballots. And last one is that despite the Marcos claim that there is a solid north for the Marcos family, Robredo still has genuine supporters in the Ilocos, in the northern regions, even in Ilocos. That's why Macalintal would like to believe that last one and said that the solid proof for any foul play in the elections would be the ballots. And unless they can present a solid proof, all of this that they're saying, that they're claiming, would simply be an allegations. And Macalintal added that even if the Marcos camp really believes that something like this did happen, their lawyers would know what to do. They know the remedy that they can take.
Jacob, I was just wondering if you could give us a better sense of what's happening there. Are you guys there overnight? Magdamagan ba yan? Are you expecting anyone to come? Senator Pangilinan, VP Lenny, of course, we know is in Camsur. Is there anyone who's coming by later?
As of now, Reg, we haven't received any notice that anyone like that important will be coming here in the headquarters. But because we haven't received any word if VP Lenny or Senator Kiko will come after they have voted, if ever, it's most likely that it's tomorrow that they will come back here in Metro Manila. But so far, here in the headquarters, again, as I said, it's really about monitoring about what's happening. But at the same time, you can feel the anxiety in the air, given that their bets are trailing behind the survey frontrunner. But at the same time, they're hopeful that that their people's campaign will be able to deliver a victory.
Okay, maraming salamat. Our mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro reporting live from the camp of VP Lenny Robredo. And to dissect further what's happening in this year's election, with us in the studio are Mr. Raul Llamas, presently, well, let me put it this way lang, former presidential political advisor of former President Noynoy Aquino, the third. Well, welcome back. I know you've been here the whole day.
Pwede na ba magtrabaho dito?
Baka mamaya, pagta muna kami. But anyway, I'd like to take off from that. Kasi, well, clearly the Bongbong Marcos camp has been making allegations of some sort of, I don't know if you'd call it fraud yet, pero anomalies
Irregularities.
Irregularities in yung output ng VCM machines. I'm wondering lang, given the margins that we've seen so far dun sa Pulse Asia survey, among others, allegations ba ng anomalies, would that play a major factor in this year's election?
I doubt it. No, I doubt it. Kung according kay Attorney Garcia ng COMELEC, ay wala naman silang namomonitor na mga major occurrences para i-taint yung election for now, no? Kaya I really doubt it kung merong mga ganon, no? Lalo na sa mga surveys, ang laki nung lead mo, no? Kaya duda rin ako na may capacity yung opposition para mag-cheat.
Why is that?
Lalo na yung gobyerno, or at least most in government, has endorsed Bongbong Marcos, no? Including the soft endorsement ni President Duterte. Kaya yung wherewithal, no? Yung wherewithal to do that, I think is very much absent.
But of course, you do realize that whenever people talk about Smartmatic, they almost instantly relate that to what they call smart magic. So nadidikit ng maraming tao yung one and the other, and they relate it to the administration of former President Aquino.
Well, the one in control now is the COMELEC. At yung COMELEC is 100% appointed ni President Duterte. Tapos yung dineclare ng COMELEC na dominant majority party at yung dominant minority party all belong to the administration. PDP Laban at saka Nacionalista. Kaya parang mahirap.
All right, before you guys get too deep into it, let me just bring in our other guest. Joining us via Zoom is Bob Herrera Lim. He's the managing director of Teneo. Good evening, Bob. Thanks for joining us today. You also have been busy the whole day guesting on other shows, talking about the elections. Your impressions so far of this historic day?
Well, there's a lot of people out there still, I think, in the streets, so we're probably not going to get the results as early as we did in 2016. So people will start speculating. It's always not good that people start speculating, but hopefully the COMELEC catches up. The hardworking vote counters, the hardworking people who are volunteering, and the teachers, it's a difficult day for them. So hopefully they're able to catch up and we get the results within a timely manner. I think that's the thing we're watching. It's been a hot, long day. People were lining up early. They've been lining up late. So hopefully it goes without a hitch from later this evening.
That's a great point by Bob, because voter turnout in 2016 was 75%, over 75%. This year we are expecting more.
Yeah, so we might get more, hopefully we can have a post-mortem about the delays, whether it was because of the inefficiency in the machines or just simply people coming out early and it's just a perception problem. But, these elections, I think, showed a lot of people were very interested. Mrs. Robredo had a lot of motivated voters. And I think even on the side of Mr. Marcos, a lot of motivated voters, some of them belonging to President Duterte's supporters. So, there's really a good chance that voter turnout will be higher this year.
Well, sir, given how heated things have become in the last few years and the last few months and how polarized the electorate has also become, we were kind of hoping na mas mabilis yung paglabas ng mga ng resulta o yung at least yung trends sa presidential vice presidential race this year compared to 2016. So from your perspective po, mukhang hindi po yun ang mangyayari. Mukhang it'll be a little later than 2016.
Yes, so siguro kailangan nila mag-time and motion study pagkatapos nito, yung simulation na pag nagtagsa ang tao, if nagka-win yung linya, ikot ng ikot, na yung tipong it adds to the perception na mabagal, inefficient, etc. So maybe they should study how the process went this year, where the machine's really slower. Did people have a harder time filling in forms, finding their names? I voted and there were a lot of people. So is it simply a matter of volume, and how can it be improved in the next elections? I think that's something the COMELEC always has to look at. We get distracted a lot by a lot of, shall we say, big issues, but sometimes the devil in doing these things in the details. There are lots of people who try to make this work, but it's a complicated exercise, right? Just planning a trip can be complicated. Planning for tens of millions of people to vote and getting the results within a time period that people won't speculate about things going wrong or things going bump in the night is always a challenge.
All right, we're gonna try to dissect the numbers for now, because elections are, of course, all about the numbers. In 2016, Leni Robredo won the vice presidential race with a slim lead over Bongbong Marcos. But if we look at the surveys for this year's elections, it seems there's only one clear front runner. There is only one clear front runner, according to the surveys. Let me bring in Carlo Pamintuan, our data presenter. He will break down the numbers for us. Carlo, what are you seeing?
Thank you for the introduction, Regina. We all know that the popular opinion is that the two leading candidates for the 2016 elections are also the two front runners for the presidential election. So we saw it fit to discuss the regions and how they voted in 2016. As you can see, red marks the votes for Bongbong Marcos, yellow for Vice President Leni Robredo. NCR went to Bongbong Marcos, and unsurprisingly, CAR, Regions 1 and 2 also went Bongbong Marcos' way. Central Luzon was for Bongbong Marcos as well. But if you can see, there was a solid block for Vice President Leni Robredo, starting with 4A, 4B, and she also got regions 5, 6, and 7. A bit of a mix in the Mindanao region. 8 and 9 went to Bongbong Marcos, 10 went to Leni Robredo, 11 and 12 for Marcos as well, but huge numbers from BARM and the Caraga region for Leni Robredo. As you can see, they were sporting the Marcos red and the Liberal Party yellow for 2016. Now, when we take a look now, when we shift the numbers towards the last survey results, we can see that there's a stark difference between, first, the colors that they're representing. It's now pink for Leni Robredo, still the Marcos red. But if you start taking a look at the numbers, you can see that there's a switch in terms of where the votes are looking to be headed. Of course, this was just a snapshot in time based on the Pulse Asia research. It was the final survey results. As you can see, only 2 regions favored Leni Robredo, 5 and 6. She won big numbers in that situation, but where are the votes coming from 4A, 4B, from 10, from the BARM and the Caraga region? Is this a cause for worry, or are these numbers deceiving us? We don't know just yet, as we are awaiting for the transmission of the results. There are areas where the vote was particularly tight. As you can see, that's just a 6% lead for Bongbong Marcos, which might go under the margin of error. But the cause for worry, I think, for Robredo will be the other areas where she won in 2016 but is losing via a lot. As you can see, specifically in the BARM and the Caraga regions, 61% and 60% favored Bongbong Marcos, at least for the Pulse Asia research survey, the final one that was published. So my question is, at least we have a pundit from the Liberal Party who worked under the presidency of President Pinoy. How much of this was a factor of the ticket vote? Because as we know, Robredo had Mar Rojas in 2016. He had his fair share of voters, almost 10 million. He finished second to President Duterte. But now, as we can see, not all of the people who voted on ticket did they switch their allegiance as compared to Bongbong Marcos, whose president, Miriam Defensor Santiago, did not really get a lot of votes, fewer than 2 million. Is this a ticket vote? And, how can, the camp of Vice President Robredo try to overhaul these huge numbers, at least when it comes to the survey?
Let's ask Ronald. Ronald Llamas from Akbayan, former presidential political advisor for Noynoy Aquino. I suppose this is an interesting question from Carlo. You're looking at, for example, 4A and 4B. That's Calabarzon and Mimaropa. Before, it was for Leni Robredo. Now, if you look over there, it's clearly for Bongbong Marcos. What could possibly explain this shift? And you're looking at a huge voting population for these, especially for this one, for Calabarzon. What could possibly explain that?
Well, una ay magkaiba yung posisyon. Ito ay labanan for the vice presidency, this for the presidency. No? Ikalawa ay wala pa si Duterte noon. Wala pang ang major factor kasi ngayon na nagpataas sa fortunes ni Bongbong ay yung Duterte coalition, especially yung daughter running as the vice president. So yung napakataas na approval rating ng Duterte ay napunta kay Bongbong. Mm-hmm. At ikatlo ay wala yung 6 na taon na demonization ng oposisyon by a very popular president, no? Na nangyari ngayon, no? Kaya yung mga variables na yan, maaga naghanda si BBM, no? 6 years. Si Vice President Leni practically during the filing of candidacy. Mm-hmm. So that is very important dahil yung isa na una ng 6 na taon eh. No? So yung 4 na variables na yon, tingin ko yung main difference between 2016 at saka 2022.
Sama natin si Carlo Bandarito sa yung 2022 survey sa Pulse Asia. Ito,
Yeah.
malinaw pa rito. Regions 5 and 6,
Yeah.
this is Bicol region. Of course,
Yeah.
bailiwick to ni Lenny Robredo. And 6 is Western Visayas. Pero, di ba, Carlo, kitang-kita mo,
Yes.
the rest of the Visayas and Mindanao, it's really red.
Yeah.
Tingin nyo, this is a factor of the Sara Duterte,
Yes, very much. Paano kung titignan mo, before the filing, Bongbong is 20%, Sara was 29%, Isko was 19%. That was before the filing. Nung nag-file si Sara for mayor, yung kanyang 29, practically napunta kay
Doon
BBM.
napunta.
Naging 47 si BBM sa next survey.
Parang nag-transpose ka lang ng percentages.
Oo, almost exactly, no? Tapos nung November, nung nag-substitute si Sara at naging vice president ni BBM, next survey ng December, 60 plus na si BBM. So makikita mo yung kanyang dramatic increase ay dahil dun sa Duterte factor, no? Na nangyari.
Also, yun nga
Can I just point out one thing though? President Duterte has not officially endorsed Bongbong Marcos.
Yes.
That's also true.
It doesn't
Even
matter.
without that, you don't think
It doesn't matter
he needs to officially say it?
Yeah, because the brand nandun eh. Dahil si Sara mismo yung anak, ang pangalan Duterte.
Correct.
No? So nandun na. Ikalawa, yung lahat ng mga personalities around the president, Bongo, etc., no? Yung mga partido supporting him, PDP Laban, Nationalista, NPC, NUP, Lakas NUCD, lahat na kay BBM na. So, tingin ko yung strategy ni President Duterte na wag mag-endorse is more para hindi siya maging lame duck eh. Hanggang sa last minute ng kanyang term. Pag-uusapan siya.
Pero siya pang kiliti.
At successful siya. Pinag-uusapan siya hanggang ngayon, no?
So it's part of the strategy na hindi siya pumunta sa meeting de Avance ng Uniteam.
Yes, no? Pero about a few days ago, may soft endorsement na siya. Anong sabi niya? Wala namang katibayan na may ill-gotten wealth, no? So, saan ang galing yung $4 billion na na-recover ng PCGG? No?
Pero Ronald, let me bring in one more thing before we leave that part. Kasi in December, bumakbak ang Pangulong Duterte kay BBM. Was that planned? Was this all planned all along? Or
Tingin
was it
ko,
parang adjusting to the numbers?
Ang pinanggalingan yun, yung frustration niya na ang gusto niya talaga, si Sara ang tumakbong presidente at si Bongo ang vice. Nung hindi nangyari yun, medyo masama loob niya, parang nasingitan siya. Kaya bumanat siya for a couple of days. 2 araw lang yun, ha? Yung bumanat siya na gumagamit, may bisyo, si
At weak
leader, sinungaling, no? Pero huwag niyo kalimutan, 2 days lang yun. Parang naglabas na siya ng sama ng loob, no? Yun yung kwento. Kaya hindi talaga siya, di ba nagsabi pa nga siya, nag-threaten pa siya, tatakbo akong vice president ni Bongo kung hindi umatras yung anak ko. Kitang-kita mo, very public yung yung away sa loob ng pamilya, no? Very public yung House of Cards nila, no? Kaya naglabas siya. Pero after nun, no? Nagbago na. Nagsimula ng i-endorse ng kanyang mga kaalyado, mga kasama sa politika, si Bongbong Marcos.
Right. Before we get too deep into the subject, I want to throw the same question to Bob Herrera Lim, our guest on Zoom. Bob, same question. In the last presidential pre-election survey, VP Lenny Robredo is basically left with just Region 5 and 6, Bicol and Western Visayas. What happened there? If you compare it to 2016.
Yeah, tama si Mr. Llamas. No? There are 3 factors. Unang-una, iba yung posisyon, di ba? We've seen national politicians who top the Senate but cannot make it to the vice presidency or vice presidency. Di ba, na-announce that they placed number 1 in the Senate. People think kaya na ito maging presidente, but then they try to jump to that higher role, hindi nangyayari. So, siguro may voter dynamic doon na kailangan explain pa kung bakit feeling ng tao, pwede ka dito, pero dito, baka hindi. The second is, as Mr. Llamas said, if you take a look, nung bago nag-announce si Sara na vice president siya, when she was still considered to be in the race last year, roughly the same time last year, lamang siya. So Mr. Marcos second in a bunch with Isko and Manny Pacquiao. So nung luminaw lang or nagbuka sa mga supporters ni President Duterte at ni Sara na baka hindi tumakbo si Sarang President, sa tingin ko ang nangyari sa utak ng mga tao is sino ang candidate na may affinity kay President Duterte. So nandiyan dyan yung inalaw ni President Duterte may libing si former President Marcos sa libingan ng mga bayani. So tinignan nila, is it Leni Robredo? No. Si Isko, hindi pa sila clear. Si Manny Pacquiao, hindi sila clear. So I think there was this belief na baka si Senator Marcos yung pinaka may affinity yung Duterte family. And nung 2019, di ba, yung may pictures na si Sara na nasa motorsiklo kasama ni Ivy. So people started, I think, piecing things together as to who they thought would be talagang yung mabuting kaalyado ng mga Marcos. And they started, or ni Sara Duterte, and they started thinking Marcos. I think those are the couple of things that happened. And obviously the third one is Marcos invested a lot in refurbishing his image, his family's image. And, we can claim it started with the YouTube vlogs mga 3 years ago. Tapos yung palabas na natalo sila, there was a lot of coverage around that na, cheated in the election. So it's not one thing, it's a lot of many small things that probably for different people sa iba-ibang tao nag-contribute sa perception nila na si Marcos na lang ang iboboto natin, whether the perception na dinaya to or the perception na ito yung kaalyado ni Duterte or yung perception na baka natin okay yung buhay ng panahon ni Marcos. And this is something that people discuss a lot, right? The maybe misplaced nostalgia, the belief na things were good during the Marcos. Lahat to in different factors pumasok sa isipan sa tingin ko na mga ngayon bumoboto for Mr. Marcos.
Okay. Mr. Bob and Mr. Ronald, I'll ask you about Cebu. Of course, it's the province with the most number of, in terms of voting population, 3.2 million people. In 2016, I think it was Leni Robredo who won there in Cebu. But yun nga ang endorsement ngayon ng LGU sa Cebu is for Bongbong Marcos. But let me ask you about that. Gaano ba kalaki talaga ang power ng endorsement ng LGU? I mean, can they speak for the province? Or is it just is it even a united party to begin with?
Malakas pa rin. Pero hindi na sila solo. Nandun na ngayon yung social media. No? Kung yung mga local officials ay merong ward leader system, yung social media meron na ring ward leader system, yung mga micro-messaging, yung mga trolls, etc. So may kompetensya na sila. No? Pero kung hawak nila pareho, mas solid yung kanilang endorsement. Paano? Marami sa mga local officials nag-i-invest na rin sa social media. No? Meron na rin silang mga IT experts, meron na rin silang mga troll farms, no? etc. Unfortunately. No? Yung Cebu is, kung makikita mo, nung simula pa lang ng campaign last year, medyo yung governor nag-spread out. No?
Yeah.
Yung kanyang anak, na kay Sara, at eventually kay BBM, no? Yung kanyang kapatid, si Congressman Pablo Jan, na kay Isko Moreno hanggang ngayon. Yung isa niyang kapatid, yung presidente dati ng GSIS, na kay Ping Lacson. No? So naka-spread out sila. At until the last minute, hindi nag-endorse si Governor Garcia. No? Nitong last month na lang siya, nag-endorse. No? So, sigurista. No? Naka-spread out.
Sa maraming ilog.
Yeah. Naka-spread out at nung last minute, yung pinaka-principal sa province ang nag-endorse. So, ito yung exactly the kind of politics we can do without. Pero, ito yung reality ngayon. No? Halimbawa, dito sa kampanya ngayon, makikita mo yung maraming nagbabaliktaran. Pero basically, nagbabaliktaran pag hindi sila yung pinili ng presidential candidate. Halimbawa, kung ito ang pinili ni Bongbong, yung isa maghahanap ng ibang presidentiable. No? Not because of principle, not because of platform, no, or track record, pero because of the reality ng paano sila mananalo sa local. No? Yun yung traditional politics na meron tayo. No?
But actually, Ronald, even in the end, they were a bit fractured because si Governor Garcia, yes, she endorsed Uniteam, pero yung kapatid niya, one was with Ping, one was with Isko.
Yes.
So there's also infighting within them, or
Yes.
disagreements at least.
It could be infighting, it could be division of ng mga Paano? Sa local kasi mahalaga basta lahat boboto sa kanila eh. No? No, yun yung mahalaga sa kanila.
Making sure that you have all your all your not all of your
I'm
eggs
sure
in one
yung mga
basket.
kapatid niya at yung anak niya kakampaign for her, no? Yung sa national, mas sinesecure nila yung future kung sakaling ito yung presidente. Sigurado yung kanilang internal revenue allotment at mga other perks, no, from the national government, no? Unfortunately, yan yung reality ng ating politics. Parang yung reality na yung ating party system ay napaka-bankrupt. Mas lalo nang naging bankrupt ngayon dahil makikita mo na lahat ng presidential candidates, no, ay hindi dala ng major parties o at least yung kanilang tinakbuhan. Ang tinakbuhan nila, sabi nga ng isang journalist, zombie parties, no? Mga parties na either matagal nang patay, hindi kilala, or hindi naman major, no? With all due respect do sa mga tinakbuhan nila na mga partido. Ikalawa ay makikita mo, marami sa mga presidential candidates may mixed senatorial slate. Ibig sabihin, hindi talaga platform-based yung choice ng kanilang slate, kung hindi practical politics, no? Ito ay kandidato yung isa kandidato ng 3 presidente, yung isa kandidato ng 4, isa kandidato. So, sa mga modern democracies, hindi pwede yan. Mamili ka. Sino ba talaga yung presidente mo? Ano ba talaga yung plataforma at prinsipyo na tinatayuan mo?
naman, you're describing Western-style democracies.
Well, at least yung positive side ng Western-style democracy.
That's right.
Paano doon naman nakapattern yung ating sistema?
Right.
No?
Let's
Pero
throw
mukhang
the same-
nakuha natin yung bad side.
Yeah. Let's throw the same question, Ed's question kay Bob. Bob, role na LGUs in all of this?
Additive sila. So, before the elections last year, umikot ako. I was in Cebu, I was in Davao, and I started asking people, sino boboto ninyo? So some people, may sasagot, boboto namin si Bongbong. Tanong ko bakit? Kasi yun yung boboto ng pamilya namin. Tapos magpo-probe ka, bakit? Kasi, yun nga, yung may ibang nakakatanda, may myth na, or may legend na it was better during the time of Marcos. So meron na yun, one block. Yung isa naman, tinanong ko, and obviously these are all unscientific and anecdotal. Yung isa naman, tinanong ko, sabi niya, kasi yung vlog ni BBM, na-attract sila doon na parang hindi naman siya yung ganun kasamang tao that he was portrayed to be. So, merong part, as Mr. Lama said, may part social media, pero may part, it's how information spreads in the LGUs. And sometimes it's patronage-based kasi minsan yung pamilya, tinatanong yung local barangay captain, so sino yung kakampi ng barangay captain. So meron pa ring value. I don't think it's purely determinative, pero in 2004, I think it worked very well for former President Macapagal Arroyo. So meron pa ring value ang LGU in terms of assisting a candidate who yung willing yung botante na sabihin, okay, I'm open to that. And whether it is because of, their patronage networks o yung kakilala nila, o yung pamilya nila, yung kamag-anak nila, nagtatrabaho para sa kandidatong to. And in fact, one of the things we heard was very early on talaga, yung parang local chapters of the Sara Duterte, Marcos campaign team were very active at the local level, organizing local representatives, kung ano man ba tawag nila, may term sila. Pero ito yung mga taong magtatrabaho at the local level. So I think all of these things all come together. And obviously, the social media, the reformulation of the candidate all work together. So one shot doesn't work. You have to put different layers into your campaign. And, that worked for Mr. Marcos. I think ang magandang tanong is bakit it doesn't work as well for Ms. Robredo. And maybe one of the reasons was she came in late, didn't have the infrastructure to do this. And therefore, ganun yung nangyari.
Okay. Baka magandang balikan natin si Carlo. Sorry,
That's
Carlo, na-interrupt tayo ng konti kanina, pero may magandang mga heat map si Carlo about looking back to
vote-rich
2016,
provinces.
when the vote-rich provinces as well. Ito yung mga kailangan nating bantayan,
Here we go.
especially when the counting starts a little past 7, which is,
So
it's
now
almost
you can
7
see-
o'clock.
Now you can see kung saan yung distribution ng mga boto. No? So that is basically the numbers that we saw from there put into a cleaner picture right now. Marcos is in the orange, Robredo is in the yellow. So nakikita mo yung distribution nung mga regions kung saan talaga naging epektibo sa nakakuha nung napakaraming boto na magkabila. It was a very tight race, the vice presidential race. But again, I pose the question, how big is it a part na yung ticket voting for, the Liberal Party, ikaw yung incumbent party, you were running alongside Mar Rojas, as opposed to the other side where Bongbong Marcos was running alongside Miriam Defensor Santiago, who did not get a lot of votes. Magiging factor ba yun? Switching some of these yellow regions into red in the upcoming election, sir.
Bok, baka magandang pakita natin kasi ito sa 2016, like you said nga, yung color yellow, dyan nanalo si Leni Robredo noong 2016, yung kulay orange kung saan nanalo si BBM. Just for graphical clarity. Now, in 2022, at least as far as yung Pulse Asia survey is concerned, itong kabuuan na ito, except for Region 5, which is the Bicol region, pula na ito. So ito lang ang dilaw, at least sa Pulse Asia survey, and itong Western Visayas. Pero almost everything else looks like it's turned red sa Pulse Asia. Diba? So that's how things appear to have changed in just 6 years. But again, like you said nga, you're looking at 3 different elements, 3 different variables, different position, among other things, as well the Duterte factor. So yun. Bok, baka maganda sige.
Another question din, Sir Ed, is yung mga areas where Vice President Robredo is doing well, gaano karami yung boto dun sa particular areas na yun? Can she really expect a windfall, or is it a limited number of votes in those particular
Ang maganda dyan, Bok, pakita mo yung vote-rich provinces, doon mo makikita kung gaano kalaki talaga yung nasa mga areas na gusto mong sundutin.
We'll do that.
Come 7:30 thereabouts.
We'll do that.
Which is 30 minutes from now.
Yes, sir.
You want to take a look at it?
Yep.
For example, the vote-rich provinces and yung natawag, you'll have to exit from here. There you go. There you go. Sa heat map there. The vote-rich and L2L corridor.
Yep. So there. Pinunto mo na, sir. Ito yung rehiyon. That is...
Bicol region is where Leni is leading sa Pulse Asia. For example, Camarines Sur is 1.3. Albay is 890,000 votes.
Yeah.
And Sorsogon, where Chis Escudero is, with 538. So, hindi siya ganun kalusog. Also, you're looking at Western Visayas. Teka ha. Western Visayas is basically this area here. Hindi kasama yung Mimaropa, which is 4B, if I remember correctly. So, Antique, Aklan, Capiz, and example, Iloilo, which is one of the bailiwicks dati ng Liberal Party, 1.6 million votes. Medyo substantial yan.
Yeah.
But compare mo, for example, let's pull up what we call the L2L corridor. L2L meaning Lingayen to Lucena corridor, which is traditionally, ang sabi nga nila, di ba Ronald, ang sabi nila, ito dati yung talagang prating puntahan ng mga kandidato dahil ang laking segment nito yung voting
Calabarzon
population.
basically has 10 million votes
Yeah.
in and of itself.
Kasi mathematics yan eh.
Yeah.
Walang presidente ang nananalo nang hindi nakuha yan.
Itong L2L.
Except noong 2004.
2004, correct.
Pero meron kang Garci nun.
Garci ka nun.
L2L.
Meron kang Garci nun.
Well, that's one factor. Yung Hello Garci was one factor. But also,
Malicious,
si
ha?
Fernando Poe won 40%, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about L2L. Lingayen, of course, the first L is here in Pangasinan, which has 2.07 million votes, if I remember correctly. So that's Pangasinan, and you have Region 3, or 3. You have Calabarzon, that's Region 4A. Basically that, and of course you have NCR. All in all, these guys, itong L2L na to, will give you 39% of the total number of votes throughout the country. So, ang laking chunk na siya. Isama pa itong Cebu, kung sakaling gusto lang isama, it's the most vote-rich province, this has around 4%.
And 39% has been enough to win presidencies in
Diba?
the Philippines.
So, sabi mo, i-add mo to, 39 plus 4, it's already 41%.
Yeah.
Swak ka na doon. Now, if you consider as well na itong Lingayen to Lucena corridor, yung L2L corridor, dito yung pinakamalaking concentration ng broadcast and print media.
Yeah.
also internet connectivity.
Yeah.
Also, almost all the industries are there.
That's why in Sprinkler, nakikita rin natin that the concentration
go.
of social media is really focused on this particular region. Halos dyan nanggagaling. Lahat ng usapan on Twitter, on Facebook, even the Google searches that we will show you a little later on, halos dyan talaga nakakoncentrate. So it is a good way to test out yung feeling ng mga tao, sino yung pinag-uusapan nila.
And last, okay, sorry.
Nako, before we get into that topic of Google searches, let's take 5 for now and move on to another story. The COMELEC reminder is clear. The extension of voting hours is not an option. We are getting very close to the closing of precincts. But here's a question. What would happen to the latecomers? To look at what's happening on the ground, we have with us mobile journalist King Senko, live from Manila. King, what is happening in your neck of the woods?
King, baka naka-mute ka. Check mo lang, Bok.
Oh yes, I'm really
There you go.
sorry about that. Okay, magandang gabi sa inyo dyan sa studio. Nandito tayo ngayon sa Santa Ana Elementary School kung saan dito na nga magtatapos yung oras ng botohan para dito sa eskwelahan na to. Tinanong natin yung mga nakabantay dito na members ng PPCRV kung may chance ba na mag-extend. Well, ang sabi nila dyan, kung may inabutan ng cut-off sa pila, hanggang dun na lang daw sila tatanggap ng mga tao. Pero beyond those, wala na. Sorry na po, hindi na po makakaboto. Pero so far, kung tatansyahin ko yung mga tao
King,
na...
sorry, may pahabol lang ha. Kung nasa pila ka
Okay.
at kung ikaw ay 30 meters away from the precinct and you intend to vote, pwede ka pang humabol. Yun ang dalawang elemento.
Tama yun, Ed. Kung nasa pila ka pa, safe ka pa. Pero kung inabot ka na ng 7 o'clock tapos saka ka palang pipila, sorry na po. Hindi na po sila tatanggap. At maidagdag ko lang, Ed, mukhang hindi na rin naabot sa ganyan eh. Kasi kung tatansyahin ko yung mga tao nandito ngayon na naiiwan, parang less than 50 people na lang to. Siguro may mga bumabalik, may ano na to. Mga poll watchers na to, mga magbabantay na to pagkatapos ng pagsasarado ng botohan.
So, konti na lang. Alam mo, sabihin mo may talpakan dyan, sigurado ako magpupunta ng mga tao dyan.
Pero ano rin katulad sa ibang mga syudad na napasyalan natin ngayon, tulad ng San Juan, Maynila at ilang parte ng Quezon City, kaninang maliwanag pa na problema rin talaga sila sa BCM dahil sa init ng panahon ngayon, may mga isolated case na mga taong nahilo. Pero in general, napakapayapa, napaka-successful ng eleksyon dito.
Ay, sige pa.
Yung mga nasirang BCM, hindi naman siya nagpatagal ng ganun sa pila ng mga tao, kaya bandang, mag-aalas 7 na, ubos nila yung mga nakapila.
Okay, King. So,
Ayun, nagdal na, tapos na.
Oy, tapos na. Okay.
Magsisirado.
Parang recess.
May bell.
Okay. Sarado na po ang tindahan, at least sa kanilalagyan ni King Senko sa Manila. Tama ba?
Manila.
Opo, Santa Ana, Maynila.
Ayan, may isa pang bell. Nag-recess na nga. Sige. But if you go by the COMELEC rules, kung ikaw ay nakapila, pasok ka pa. At kung ikaw ay 30 minutes away from the polling precinct at you intend to vote, maaari ka pang humabol. Pero maliban doon po, sarado na po ang tindahan at kung hindi pa kayo nakaboto, well, there's always next time.
Tama po yun.
So, agahan po ninyo next time. Ayun po. King, teka, would you know what the process is? Anong mangyayari ngayong nag-recess boto na dyan?
Yan ang alamin natin, Ed, no? Kasi kanina nung kausap natin yung mga taga-PPCRV, sila rin, they're playing it by ear. Kung ano man ang mangyayari dito, tututukan natin yan at ibabato po natin pag may mga updates tayo dito.
Baka maganda po kung mababaklas mo naman yung setup mo, pumasok ka sa isang presinto, lumapit ka doon at makiusyoso ka doon. Huwag ka lang pipindot-pindot na kung ano doon, ha?
Alright, sige, gawin natin yan.
Sige. Balikan namin maya ng konti at timbran mo kami kung anong nakikita mo. Kasi by this time, they should be closing already shop. Sinasara na yung tindahan. They should be finalizing the count in the vote counting machines and they should be getting ready for transmission.
That's right. We're getting to the exciting part. Malapit na tayo sa exciting na parts.
Ikaw ba? Ikaw ba'y kinakabahan o ano?
He's very calm.
May access na ba kayo sa exit polls?
Wala na exit polls.
Ha?
Wala na masyadong exit polls.
May mga
Uso ba ba yung
naglalabas
exit
pa
polls
rin.
ngayon?
Ha?
May nag-exit polls pa ba ngayon?
Yung Tangere, kalalabas lang kanina.
Oh, yeah, but
Hapon.
the Tangere kasi
Sana,
uses an app.
usually SWS gumagawa ng exit poll. Hindi ko lang alam
But
ngayon.
that was when SWS was still doing published surveys.
Yes, yes.
That's why I was asking kung kung uso pa yung exit polls kasi apparently nagkakaroon ng problema yung mga survey firms getting sponsors. At least that's what we get from SWS.
Yeah.
Bok, I think we're missing the point. Mayroon siyang inside
Ay,
information.
sorry.
So,
Sorry,
So,
I'm a little
Ronald,
dense sometimes.
you
so maybe
have
can help us out
access
here.
to the exit polls.
Yung
What
nga
is it
sabi ko
telling
doon sa
us?
nagpadala ng isang survey poll. Ko, credible ba yan?
Teka, so anyway, Ronald, total tayong tatlo lang naman dito. Tayong
Yeah.
apat lang naman dito.
Yeah.
Baka pwede mong kwentuhan kung ano nakuha mo.
Di ako naniniwala rin sa nakuha ko eh. Kaya ayoko ilabas eh. No.
Mahirap.
Hindi ako
It's like pulling teeth.
ayoko na ako yung masira.
Sige.
Pwede mo
Galing-
naman i-credit sa Tangere, right? We don't have to attribute to you.
Galing nila isko yun eh.
Hindi, okay lang. We're willing to take any information. We just qualify
Okay
it.
ba tayo?
Binubulong mo. Narinig ka naman. Naka-microphone sa
Ito
akin.
na lang, yes or no, Ronald?
Yeah.
Tama ba ang surveys?
Basically, tingin ko. No?
Okay, there we go.
Yung lumalabas na exit polls, parang at least yung initial, no, is basically consistent sa traditional surveys. Sabi ko traditional dahil meron nagko-contest ng traditional surveys eh.
Yeah.
Yung bagong
With Google Trends and all.
yes, yung predictive template ng Google Trends na accurate daw sa ibang bansa. Pero ayun nga, medyo naiiba sa atin.
But I suppose if this is Tangere, we should as well contextualize it because it's a survey based on that uses an app.
Yes.
Which
That's
also adds another dynamic to everything.
Yes.
It's not your traditional usual survey. Si Mr. Bob, baka may nababalitaan dyan.
Wala naman, pero ako agree rin ako kay Mr. Llamas. Kasi kung dikit tong election na to, di ba? Yung Brexit dikit, kaya yung survey nag-iba sa final outcome.
Yes.
Yung kay Trump rin, although yung kay Trump and Hillary in 2016, syempre may electoral vote dynamics yun, di ba? Kasi hindi naman popular vote ang US, but yung electoral system. Pero kung dikit to, we would really be looking at the surveys very closely. Pero the surveys we've seen over the past 3 months, whether you're talking yung SWS quote-unquote na nag-leak, yung Pulse Asia, yung Tangere, yung all of these things, parang they're in the same ballpark. So if this was a race na 35 si BBM, tas 32 si Mrs. Robredo, yung ganong kadikit, baka talagang himayan tayo. Pero right now, the way the surveys have done, kahit may margin of error, mukhang they'll be consistent with the outcome. The only question is, could some things have changed, right? Mas motivated pa ang voters ni Mrs. Robredo kay Marcos. So baka mas narrow yung lead ng konti. Or, again, we've seen large numbers of people come out. Talagang marami ba talagang bumoto? They wanted to vote. They were motivated to vote. And the final numbers will match generally in the ballpark of what we've been seeing with the surveys, with Marcos somewhere between 55, give or take 5%, Mrs. Robredo 25 to 20, give or take a few percentage points. So ganon. Pero I think kahit kami, we're asked to forecast these things for our clients. We're sticking with that na mukhang ganito. The only surprise would be maybe if it was slightly narrower. Pero unless there's a large systematic or systemic error in the polling that's been done over the past 3 months, I don't think that's going to happen.
Very good point.
Okay.
Hindi siya dikit eh. It's a very big gap.
Even if you consider margins of error.
Correct. Which is only about what, 5%, 2%?
2% to 3%. Thereabouts. Usually doon naglalaro yung pulse surveys 2 to 3%.
Yung mga Google Trends tsaka mga traditional surveys sa ibang bansa, hindi magkalayo. No? Or even similar, no? Yung resulta. Kaya yun yung kaibahan sa atin.
Kaya maaring maglaro, maaring tumugma yung Google Trends dun sa ibang bansa with the elections.
Limawa, kay Macron sa France, na accurate yung Google Trends. No?
But
Accurate
he was
yung
also
Google
leading
Trends,
sa
pero
surveys.
katulad din ng traditional survey doon, yung output ng Google Trends. So walang bumbuhan.
Walang
Dito meron no? Dito meron, no? Ikalawa, iba rin yung demographics dahil sa US, sa Canada, sa Australia, sa Europe, yung mga gumagamit ng Google Trends halos across all demographics. Sa atin, ang sinasabi nila, baka hindi pa. Baka yung DNE, pag gumagamit ng Google Trends, para tignan kung sino yung mga artista, or sino yung mga influencers, or sino yung mga singers, or sino yung anong produkto yung gusto nilang bilhin. No? Mas doon pa nakafocus rather than doon sa iboboto.
And that's assuming that Filipinos like to Google things. Nauso nga yung mga katagang i-Google mo.
Yeah, basta may problema ka, Google mo.
Which also says a lot na parang hindi tayo mahilig mag-Google. I-Google mo nga lang. Ginagawa natin.
I-Google mo, meron pang meron pang G sa dulo eh. I-Google mo G.
You know, I actually do Google Trends training for students, and the first thing that we always bring up is the fact that it's sentiment agnostic. In other words, it doesn't tell you what they're feeling. It doesn't give you any indication what they're thinking. Just the fact that, okay, people are searching you. Exactly. So it can't possibly... Hindi siya apples to oranges comparison with surveys.
It's interest, which can mean people love you or they hate you.
Exactly. Exactly.
Which can be just as bad.
All right. Well, guess what, guys? Voting hours is officially over. The question now is, when do we expect the votes to come in? Coming to us live at from the PPC RV Center is Camille Samonte. Camille, everyone is on the edge of their seats. Anong balita?
Okay, we're bringing in Camille live from the PPCRV. PPCRV, of course, is where they have the transparency server. Doon na-connect ang lahat ng tao, lahat ng networks. So what they get is also what we'll be getting in the next few minutes, in the next few hours.
Correct.
So like what we said kanina, walang suspension ng transmittal. We just have a suspension of the National Board of Canvassers. In the meantime, while we wait for Camille and possibly the results, we'll bring in Carlo Pamintuan, who can tell us more about ano yung mga probinsyang mahalagang tutukan dahil ang dami pala nilang botante.
Pinag-usapan na natin kanina, Sir Ed, yung pinakamaraming botante ay nasa Calabarzon. They have a total of 9,193,096 voters. Kaya naman yun siguro yung dahilan kung bakit paulit-ulit pinuntahan ng mga presidential candidates yung mga bayan dyan. Of course, NCR has 7.3 million. Central Luzon also has about 7.3 million. So, if you do the math, between those numbers and yung mga huling numero ng mga statistics na nakita natin in the survey ng Pulse Asia, it's very worrying, no? If you are a supporter of any other candidate outside of Bongbong Marcos. Because if you take out Calabarzon entirely and just focus your numbers on NCR and Central Luzon na merong total of 14 million views.
14 plus 9 million sa Calabarzon.
No. NCR and Central Luzon, 7 each. They have about 14 million. And BBM, at least in the last survey, average about 60% from Central Luzon and NCR. So if you total 60% of 14 million, that's about 8.4 million votes already. So napakaraming boto na niyan. Kung idagdag mo yung mga boto coming from yung mga baluarte nitong si BBM, you get closer and closer to the number that President Rodrigo Duterte won with back in 2016.
And then there's another region that we were talking about a while ago, which is Calabarzon. Bakit po kasi is NCR with 7, Region 3 with another 7, Calabarzon with 9.
9.2.
Where BBM, I think, is also leading, di ba? If you add them all together, 7 plus 7, 14 plus 9 is 23. Already 23 million votes. What, 60%? 60%?
In Calabarzon, the stats were not as heavy, leaning towards BBM, not as the 60% from NCR. And the Central Luzon, he has a 54% in 4A, 35% in 4B. So again, the math, at least in the last survey, really heavily favors Bongbong Marcos.
Actually, before we broke earlier, you guys were talking about the L2L corridor, Lingayen to Lucena. But earlier, Ronald, na-mention nyo din na actually you don't need to win L2L anymore. Hindi na siya ganun ka-significant. Tell us why.
Actually, significant pa rin. No?
Because you win it, the winner takes all, right? 40%
lalo na
votes.
kung tight ang labanan, no? Significant pa rin siya. Sabi ko nga kanina, once lang yan na bago nung panahon ni
GMA
GMA noong 2004, no? Nakuha niya yung yung Cebu, tapos Maguindanao, no? At doon nga nangyari yung Hello Garci. No? Yun kasi yung first time na natalo ang isang winning presidential candidate sa L2L. No? Kaya kahit ngayon, kailangan mo pa rin yan. No? Pero dahil ngayon, at least kung totoo yung mga surveys, no? At makikita natin siguro initially mamaya, kung totoo yung mga surveys ay parang hindi siya masyadong na-emphasize dahil parang across the board yung lead, no? At saka malaki yung margin. No? Pero mahalaga pa rin yung L2L.
But in this particular case nga, you're looking at medyo sizable margin eh.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
In that sense nga.
That's what I meant.
Okay. Anyway, we'll come back to that. I think we have to go into a gap for a few minutes, Reg. So please stay with us. We'll do a quick break. This is Bilang Pilipino 2022 here in One News. All sides, all the time.
Bilang Pilipino. Bilang Pilipino.
right, welcome back. This is Bilang Pilipino 2022 here on One News. I'm Regina.
And I'm Lingao. You're watching us from the One News Election Data Monitoring Center here in Reliance Street, Mandaluyong City.
Presidential candidates VP Leni Robredo and former Senator Ferdinand Marcos Jr. are once again duking it out for position in this year's elections. This time, it's the seat in Malacanang. But before that, let's go back to what happened in 2016 during the vice presidential race. To dive deep into the data, we have Carlo Pamintuan. Carlo, take us through the numbers.
Thank you for that as we take a look at the numbers from 2016 and break down kung ano yung nangyari in the vice presidential results. As you can see, we are also taking a look at some of the vote-rich provinces. No? Kabilang na dyan ang Cebu City. Also, additional to that is Cebu, where Leni Robredo really got a lot of votes, 590,000 plus 162 coming from Cebu City, as opposed to about 300,000 coming from Bongbong Marcos. So you see a clear picture of the areas kung saan nanalo ng malaki itong si Vice President Leni Robredo, including Negros Occidental, where she was also strong. Batangas was also hers. Iloilo and Iloilo City also voted yellow in the vice presidential elections. On the other side, Cavite, Pangasinan, Laguna, Bulacan, Rizal, and Nueva Ecija all voted for Bongbong Marcos. Shifting over to this side, as you can see, Pampanga, napag-usapan natin, no, Central Luzon has a lot of votes coming in and they voted red, with Bongbong Marcos getting 434,000 as compared only to 293,000. He also won Davao del Sur, Zamboanga del Sur, and Isabela. On the other side, Vice President Leni Robredo got Leyte, Quezon, Camarines Sur, yung mga baluarte talaga niya, including Misamis Oriental, winning it via slim margin, and Bohol by a lot. Negros Occidental also voted in favor of Vice President Robredo. Ngayon, punta tayo dito in the other numbers that we have. As you can see, the voting by region, itong napakaraming boto that came in for Bongbong Marcos coming from NCR, from the Cordillera Autonomous Region, Regions 1, 2, and 3 also his. And we also explained it earlier, 4A, 4B voted Leni Robredo, and a large part of it also because of the ticket with Mar Rojas. Regions 5, 6, and 7 also voted with the Liberal Party, and that determined what happened, no? As we can see, the final group of regions, Region 10 was for Mrs. Robredo, 13 as well. Yung BARM, that is trending towards Marcos now, was heavily hers. As you can see, more than 200,000 votes yung naging lamang niya kay Bongbong Marcos, and it all led to a wild and woolly count that was won by the slimmest of margins in the 2016 vice presidential race. Sir Ed?
Okay, Carlo, thank you very much for that. Would you like to also show some heat maps again, yung 2016 elections?
We're still waiting for the transmissions of the results, sir.
Okay, and we should be seeing that in a few minutes. Well, hopefully in a few minutes. Of course, that also depends on the VCMs. Well, Ronald, ano? I don't know if you've been asked this before, but well, let me try to ask you this as well again. You know, we had a discussion a while ago, early this morning, with Professor Antonio Contreras. I asked him specifically about ano bang issues na importante sa mga botante for these elections. Basically, sabi niya, perhaps the problem is that we're looking at, issues like poverty, jobs, and these are such general issues that candidates address with such general answers. But perhaps the better way of looking at it is that Bongbong Marcos' supporters look at a different set of issues that are important to them compared to Leni Robredo. Although meron silang meeting in between. Pero for example, Bongbong Marcos supporters daw look at continuity. And they also look at anti-insurgency, the anti-communist arguments of the Duterte administration that apparently Bongbong Marcos wants to continue. Versus yung mga supporters ni Leni Robredo na anti-corruption. Yun ang importante sa kanila. So parang dun pa lang, meron kang difference in ano ba importante sa iyo as a voter. Pero at the same time, nagtutugma sila in the sense na for both sides, to me, it's a gut issue because it boils down to, well, economy, presyo ng bilihin, gutom. I mean, in the end, you can distill it to that eh. What do you think? Mukha bang ganun nga?
Dito mo nga makikita yung contradiction eh. Dahil sa mga surveys, meron namang tanong doon about what concerns voters eh. Diba? At usually, katulad most elections, katulad ngayon, ang lumalabas diyan ay economy, hanap buhay, no, dagdag na sahod, no, pagkain, no, kalusugan, edukasyon, no. Usually, 'yan yung madalas na lumalabas, no,
Actually,
sa mga survey. Pero pag titignan mo yung campaign ngayon, ang number one, at least sa traditional survey, ang kanyang ina-address is the lowest common denominator.
The LCD.
No? Yung hindi masyadong platform-based, hindi principle-based, hindi governance-based. No? Halimbawa, bagong umaga, no? Unity. Walang nakalagay, anong ibig sabihin yan? Hindi ka nga sumasama sa debate para ipaliwanag yan eh. No? Pero number one ka sa mga surveys. No? So malayo siya dun sa concern na lumalabas in the same survey about platforms, about economic issues, about social services, no? About jobs at saka wages.
But
no?
to some people, pag sabi mo bangon tayo muli, baka that to them addresses already the issue or the question of poverty.
Yes, or baka mas concern ng mga tao is the Taliano Gold or the ATM card. No, hindi mo sigurado, no? Kung ano talaga. Parang sa ibang focus group discussion, lumalabas yun eh. Nagulat nga yung iba, seryoso pala, may naniniwala pala ron. No? Yun,
Marami.
Marami, di ba?
You have documentaries about that
yes.
on YouTube.
So sa actual campaign, yung concerns na lumalabas about platform, hindi nag-reflect. Halimbawa, yung mga kandidato na nagdi-discuss ng platform, no? Senator Ping Lacson, no? Leni Robredo, no? To some extent si Isko and Manny Pacquiao. Paano nasa debate sila eh, pinapaliwanag nila yung programa nila eh, no? Eh syempre malayo sa kanila sa survey si Bongbong na hindi nagpapaliwanag ng platform, no? So in terms of strategy, ang talagang tinira nung campaign ni Bongbong ay yung least common denominator, no? Yung tingin nila na non-threatening. Yung tingin nila na maganda sa awit, maganda sa windmill, no? Maganda sa imagery, pero not in terms of substance. Kaya in a way, reflection 'yan ng ating level ng political discourse. Reflection 'yan ng ating political system, no?
Right.
Na sana ay ma-develop sa mga susunod na mga political engagement sa susunod na eleksyon. Or else, lalaki yung problema natin.
Right.
O lalawak yung LCD, yung least common denominator.
Yes.
Hanggang dito, nasa mathematics na naman tayo.
Yun na nga eh. Let's throw the same question to Bob. Bob, pre-election survey says respondents are worried about the economy, jobs, inflation. And yet, we know very little about former Senator Bongbong Marcos's platforms. Bakit may disconnect?
Kasi ganito yan. Ako ang tingin ko dyan, agree na naman ako kay Professor Llamas, no? Ang motivation ng tao para bumoto, complicated yan. May ibang tao sasabihin nila, boboto lang ako dahil ito sa rason na to. Tingnan mo sa US, si Trump, di ba, sabi nila, walang saysay itong taong to, etc. Pero a lot of people in the US voted for Trump because they identified with an issue they thought about him. So sabi nga ni Mr. Llamas, yung ibang tao, inisip nila, ay may makukuha ako kay Bongbong. Gold, ATM card, etc., etc. Pero it goes back, we have to take, I think, a step further. When people receive information, there's a certain bias in them about what information they're willing to receive. So may mga tao, skeptical na sila from the start about Mrs. Robredo. Okay? They said, elite yan, part yan ng mga LP, part yan nila, Pinoy, etc. And we must admit, there was something that got hurt with the LP brand. Kasi if we're talking about the economy, Marojas should have won right? Because we were coming off very high growth. If you take a look at the data on the economy, it was doing well under Pinoy. But then people were saying, but was the growth equitable? Was it fair? So baka mamaya dyan, may mga tao talaga feeling nila, o sige, tumaas yung sweldo ko nitong amount, pero yung ibang tao na who don't play fairly, tumaas yung sweldo ng napakalaki, mas malaki sa akin. So nagiging relative yung computation nila ng benefit nila. So sa tingin ko, ang importante dyan is, I think may nangyari dito that there were certain biases that the Marcos campaign catered to. And as Mr. Llama said, they cater to the lowest common denominator in many of these things. Unity, let's be unified, etc. And that doesn't go against these people's bias na, ayoko na ng LP, ayoko na kay Mrs. Robredo, ayoko na sa Tilaw, whether it's pink or anything. So, compatible pa rin, even though Mr. Marcos does not discuss anything. And now, Lenny comes in and discusses all these governance platforms. Even Isko puts forward governance platforms, and even Ping Lacson put forward governance platforms, na pag tinignan mo, you would say, okay to, mas may laman to, pero people were not reading them in that way. May parang mahinahanap silang iba, and I think that was the thing that happened. I think if pag hinimay natin to at the end of the day, there is a lot of resentment in the Philippines about the entrenched elites. Yung mga taong nagpatakbo. Kasi may magsasabi naman, pero ito, I'll just prolong that. Sabi naman nila, pero si Marcos naman gumawa ng problema 30, 40, 50 years ago. And the thing is, yun nga ang problema sa atin sa Pilipinas. I've always said, elections and voting are the downstream of democracy. Okay? Parang ilog yan. Yan yung nasa baba. Yung nasa taas, institutions, rule of law, education, norms. Yun yung mga importanteng bagay na dinedevelop natin as a democracy para pagdating sa dulo-dulo, yung tipong yung boto naman natin, feeling natin, is not based on bias, but on informed citizens making a decision based on common ideas. Or, at least, kung hindi common yung idea nyo, intelligent debate. Pero, nasira na nga sa atin yan. Kaya yung pag-ayos ng bayan natin talaga will not, we are not moving towards that, unfortunately.
Presidential debate noong 2016 sa
Oh, yes.
Cebu. Kayo nag-host
Yes.
noon, di ba?
Yes,
Di ba?
that was a fascinating debate.
Yes, no? Tinanong si Digong, ano bang platform mo?
Sa ekonomiya.
No? Ano bang platform mo sa ekonomiya? Ganito. Anong sabi ni Digong? Kung ano yung sinabi nila, yun na rin sa akin. Di ba? Yung talagang tinitrivialize, talagang binabaliwala. No? Pero ganun yung mga populist eh. Katulad ni Trump. Di ba? Si Trump may mga one-liner eh. Lying Ted, Crooked Hillary, Low Energy Bush, etc. Mga one-liner lang. Nire-reduce niya. No? Dinudurog niya yung kanyang mga kalaban through one-liners. Ganun din yung ginawa ni Digong noong 2016. No? Anong tawag din sa isang kandidato? Ayan, magnanakaw yan. Ayan, hindi yan Pilipino. Ayan, bakla yan. Ganun ha, sa presidential debate. So, may similarity itong mga populist leaders na ito eh. No? Na pumupunta sila sa least common denominator na at the same time, makaka-stimulate ng emotions. Di ba? Yun yung hindi sila pumupunta sa cognitive level na pinag-uusapan talaga yung substance ng mga issue. Pupunta sila personalan, no? Ad hominem. Bakit? Dahil karamihan natutuwa ron eh. 'Di ba? Personalan ng kultura natin eh pag nag-aaway eh. 'Di ba? Yun yung
Pero let me follow the thread. There are some who argue na ayaw ng mga Pilipino ng negative campaigning, and that is supposedly one of the reasons why daw hindi umaangat yung numbers ni Leni Robredo versus Bongbong Marcos, who does not supposedly engage in negative campaigning. But if you look at that example from 2016,
yes and
all
no.
the examples you cited, they clearly are negative campaigning.
Yes and no. Dahil ang beneficiary ng negative campaign, si Leni Robredo from Duterte. Di ba? Yun yung for the past 6 years. Talagang binanatan. Kaya, in a way, nakatulong kay BBM yung negative campaign na ginawa ni Digong sa mga kalaban ni BBM, no? Against Pacquiao, against Isko, against Ping, against Leni, no? Magaling si BBM not only in enabling the Marcoses, no? But in demolishing
You mean Duterte?
in demolishing their enemies. No? Magaling si Digong diyan. Kaya
So in other words, BBM did not even have to go
kino-contest ko
to that,
yung premise na ayaw ng mga Pinoy ng negative campaign. Ang pinakamagaling sa negative campaign, si Digong, na very popular hanggang ngayon, no? Talagang dinevelop niya into a fine art ang negative campaign. No?
Let me take that question to Bob again. Bob, negative campaigning. One of our guests earlier, si Antonio Contreras, said the mere fact that VP Robredo started her campaign by saying, I am running against Marcos. I'm running to fight Marcos again. Do you think that hurt her?
No, I don't think that hurt her. Pero, syempre, I think what really hurt Mrs. Robredo is late siya pumasok sa campaign. Late siya pumasok sa race, okay? Because if she came in earlier, defined herself better, then she would have solidified that block, tapos i-expand niya na. Pero yung negative campaigning, talaga, agree ako kay Mr. Llamas. Lenny was hit on so many things, right? Na yung iba trivial, na walang kinalaman about governance, it was so trivial. Marcos has been hit also on his, shall we say, on his family, etc. And that's why they've actually avoided the debates. Kasi alam nila pwedeng panggulo yan, no? So we have to, again, but I go to the point that you have to step back. Bakit mas receptive yung mga, shall we say, yung mga botante, and right now it looks like, let's say 60% will go to Mr. Marcos. Bakit mas receptive sila to the hits against Mrs. Robredo while the voters are not as receptive of the hits against Mr. Marcos? So it goes back to, we go back one step. How are they processing the information related to what these candidates in their mind represent? So sa tingin ko, we have to go back. Merong sort of sa bansa natin, sa tingin ko ngayon, talagang may resentment of the elites. In the US, it showed up as the resentment of the people who live on the West Coast and East Coast versus the people who live in the heartland. In the US, in Brexit, sa UK, it was the resentment of what you might call the people who were willing to embrace Europe versus the people inside the older communities who said, no, nawawalan kami ng trabaho. So I think there's a certain resentment of the political elites as they have been over the past 30 or 40 years, the post-Marcos era. And Marcos actually capitalized on this. Kasi makikita mo, di ba, marami nagsasabi, nung panahon ni Marcos may disiplina. Nung panahon ni Marcos, okay ang gobyerno. There was a strong leader, etc. And maybe that is what really is at the gut of many people's expectations of kung sino yung gusto nila. So, ang challenge sa Pilipinas is we don't have too much scholarship on this. We have to have more studies of this kasi baka nga we have to take a step back.
Bob,
Bakit? Yes.
Sorry. I just want to interject. You keep saying that this is a vote for the anti-establishment, anti-political elite, but isn't Marcos the very definition of the political elite? Hindi ba ironic yun?
Yes, pero yun ang ironic, yun yung cognitive dissonance, di ba? Kasi, pero ang sa tingin nila, ang elite ngayon, and ito yung binibenta, ang elite yung dilaw, ang elite yung pinklawan, ang elite sila Cory, then si Pinoy, etc. So pinortray that we have had this elite over the past 40 years na ito yung mga nagpatakbo ng bayan natin, nasaan kayo ngayon, di ba? Parang pinapresent nila. And I think they're capitalizing sa resentment na baka tumaas yung inequality sa bayan natin. I think it is one of the problems we have na tumaas ang inequality na, sige, umangat ang ibang tao. Yung karamihan ng tao, umangat na nakabili na sila ng motor, mas matino na yung buhay nila. Pero pag tumingin sila sa paligid nila, nagdudusa sila ng ilang oras sa EDSA, nagdudusa sila ng ilang oras sa MRT, habang yung nakakotse, ang sarap ng buhay, naka-skyway, naka-aircon, may driver, etc. I think there is a certain resentment na nag-build up. And ngayon, what Marcos did well, or what the anti-Leni Robredo crowd did well, and I think President Rodrigo Duterte, is say, ito yung mga taong may kagagawan ngayon ng paghihirap ninyo. Now, Mrs. Robredo said, no, it's a long, tapos may mga statistics, but it's easier to talk to the current emotion than to come out with statistics from explaining 30, 40 years ago. Kasi honestly, if you talk even to people who are university graduates, ask them, ano ba talaga pagkakamali ni Marcos in terms of running the economy? Very few will be able to give an answer.
Sir, so you're saying it's actually resentment of the perceived elite. If I'm getting it right, it's at least yung perceived elite who actually belong to just one segment of the elite. Okay.
Yes, kasi tingnan mo, si Pinoy, di ba, growth natin 5-6% going up. Pero Marro has lost, Marro has struggled. And And, you can talk to your friends, bakit hindi nila binoto si Marojas? Pero successful dati yung Mr. Palengke ni Marojas, di ba? Pero sa tingin ko, something happened in between. So it's a resentment of the perceived elite, or to be more precise, the post-1986 political elites. Kaya ang tira lagi dyan, if you take a look at the strategy, is to hit Pinoy. Now, I'm not saying right, correct, or wrong. I'm just saying, tirahin mo si Pinoy, tirahin si Cory. Ramos was hit a little bit, hindi ginagalaw si GMA and hindi ginagalaw si Estrada. The hit was really on the yellows, and Mrs. Robredo is tied to this. Kaya siguro she had to go to pink to take that off. Pero mas malalim yun, naggulo talaga.
Okay, fascinating discussion. Maraming salamat kay Mr. Bob Herrera Lim ng Teneo. Sir, thank you very much for joining us tonight. We hope to have you again sometime very soon, if not in this program, other programs as well. Thank you, sir. Ingat po.
Thank you.
All right, as of 7 p.m., 22,693 clustered precincts reported closed voting, while 466 clustered precincts have reported transmission. To give us an update, we are bringing in Shyla Francisco again. She's coming to us live from Pasay City. Shyla, what's the update?
Reg, Ed, as of 7 p.m., 22,693 cluster precincts have reported closed voting. That's out of more than 106,000 precincts nationwide. 486 cluster precincts reported also transmission, but we have yet to see the partial and unofficial results here. There's no word yet whether they will also extend the voting, despite clamor from a lot of voters to extend the voting. Hopefully, the proclamation for the local positions can be declared tonight, while the proclamation for the governor, vice governor, and sangguniang panlalawigan on the next day. Reg, Ed?
Okay, 22,000 cluster precincts nagsarado ng tindahan. That's around, one out of every 5 precincts in the country closed shop already.
Max na naman tayo, Ed.
Oh. Tapos 486 precincts, tama ba? Ang nakapag-transmit na.
Yes, Ed, that's right. 486 cluster percent. And just to give you also an update, earlier we told you that there are 168 defective VCM. As of 7 p.m., the COMELEC reported 533 defective VCMs, or vote counting machine, that represents 0.5% of the total VCMs nationwide. Of the number, 105 have been repaired already. Ed? Reg?
Okay. Shyla, I suppose the question on everybody's mind is kung meron ng 486 precincts nakapag-report o nakapag-transmit ng kanilang data, how soon would we get substantial results? At least dun sa President and Vice President.
Ed, as far as the results are concerned, we have yet to hear from the COMELEC when the partial and unofficial results will be. But as far as the official results are concerned, the target for the presidency and the vice presidency is that when they start canvassing on May 23, hopefully it can be declared officially before June 3. As for the senators and party lists, the COMELEC is targeting to proclaim it 1 week after the polls. Ed, Reg?
Before June 3, ang tagal pa nun. Hopefully we can we can have a good idea by tonight
We're
or
gonna have
early
to just
tomorrow
keep
morning.
following it. Thank you so much, Shyla Francisco, coming to us live from Pasay.
Okay, the rule is simple. Get the highest number of votes to win the elections. But how many votes are we talking about, particularly for the past winners? Meron nga bang trend? Are survey results really enough to project the outcome? Carlo Paminton will walk us through all of that. Carlo.
Let us look at the numbers, at least in terms of the final Pulse Asia survey for 2022. As you can see, it was a big margin in favor of Bongbong Marcos at 56%. Napakataas niyan in the last first choice presidential preference survey by Pulse Asia. Second to him was Vice President Leni Robredo at 23%, Manny Pacquiao at 7%, Isko Moreno at 4%, and Ping Lacson at 2%. Now, why is that number important? Why is 56% important? Let's now take a look at the last results ng ating mga presidential elections from way back in 1969. As we can see, 40% has been more or less enough to win the elections in the past 4 editions of the Philippine presidential elections. President Rodrigo Duterte won with 16 million votes, winning 39%. Pumapangalawa sa kanya si Mar Rojas with 9.9 million. In 2010, President Benigno Aquino III won with 15 million votes, edging out Joseph Estrada, former president as well, winning with 9.4 million votes. Gloria Macapagal Arroyo won with 12.9 million votes for about 40% right on the dot, beating Fernando Poe Jr., who finished with 11.7 million votes. And then Joseph Estrada, when he first campaigned for the presidency, won it with 39.86%, edging out Jose de Venecia, who only finished with 4.2 million. Pero yung numerong pinakita natin kanina, about 57%, it all becomes rather interesting when we see the last time that a Marcos dominated the presidential elections. It was Ferdinand Marcos back in 1969, where he won 61.47% of the votes. A majority president with 61%, 5 million yung nakuha niyang boto as compared to only 3.1 million for Sergio Osmeña Jr. The question now is, will lightning strike twice for the Marcoses?
Carlo, that's an incredible figure, and I just emphasize this, okay? 61%. And the surveys, well, we had a survey graphic earlier. Wala, none of them even came close to a majority. And if the surveys are correct this time around, it would have been 53 years since we had another president who won by majority, and it's going to be potentially another Marcos.
Again.
Although what I think is also significant with 1969 was that we had a two-party system at that time. So yung boto mo talaga ay hati lamang sa dalawang partido versus yung multi-party system where you now have a mas varied yung choices ng mga tao. Pero yun nga, if you bring in the 56%, at least from the Pulse Asia survey, that's really unusually high for what we've been having for the past 36 years.
1992 was particularly eventful with a lot of great candidates running. Miriam Defensor Santiago, of course, Danding Coangco, Ramon Mitra, Imelda Marcos, Jovito Salonga, all making that particular race a tight one. Kaya naman nanalo na yung 23.58% ni former President Fidel Ramos.
One more point to make, I suppose. You can see nga the very high numbers of Ferdinand Marcos Sr. from 1969 and the high number of Bongbong Marcos with a Pulse Asia survey of 56%. I suppose what's ironic is that ang high numbers are the Marcoses and an Aquino with 42%, at least compared to the others from the past 36 years. Diba? Of course, si Noynoy does not reach the numbers of the Marcoses, pero sila'y matataas.
But then there was also a confluence of factors apparently in 2010, right,
Yes.
Ronald?
Yes.
There was a groundswell of support for former President Aquino.
Yes. Noong 2010 ay namatay yung nanay, si Corazon Aquino, at yun yung wellspring of support ni Noynoy. Pero napaka-unpopular din ni GMA noon, no? Negative yung napakataas ng kanyang negative approval rating. Kaya yung kanyang kandidato napakalayo rin, no? Tapos si Manny Villar ay medyo tinamaan din ng tsunami, no?
Tsunami.
Dahil sa C5 at saka dahil sa
Nasagasaan siya ng ano.
Villaroyo, no? Kaya yun, iba yung 2010.
All right. Let's bring in another guest to give us an assessment of the data presented by Carlo. Let me bring in political science professor Antonio Contreras. Good evening, Professor
Actually,
Contreras.
retired political science professor.
Retired professor.
Si Mr. Contreras likes to emphasize that. Mukhang hindi naman vacation mode, pero retirement mode si Mr. Contreras.
He has been with us the whole day today. Thank you for that.
Magandang gabi sa inyong lahat.
Professor Contreras, we were just talking about the survey, the last 2022 pre-election surveys, as well as the actual presidential results over the last 53 or so years. What do you think? Are we gonna have another majority president?
Well, first of all, I heard Ed mention earlier a very valid explanation why Ferdinand Marcos Sr. got majority because we had only two candidates before the two-party system. So it is expected that whoever wins will get majority. We could not compare those. What we can compare will be when we started having many candidates running, and it seems that if surveys hold, then anytime now we will know whether they're going to hold. We are going to probably have, for the first time that we had multi-party system, a candidate is going to win a clear majority. So that means that the support, if that happens, the support to the front runner is overwhelming. I was listening a little bit earlier about the discussion in the previous segment about explanations why Marcos is winning the hearts of people, and I do agree that his narrative is simple. It's not cluttered. His object is also actually excellent. I think it's very professional. When you look at his ads, and it's almost like a Cecil B. DeMille production. But the other thing that I'd like to comment is that I think, and with all due respect to the other panelists, I don't think it's accurate to say that Marcos doesn't have a platform. I have objectively looked at the platforms of all candidates because I was a member of a panel before that interviewed these candidates. So nakita ko yung mga plataforma nila, may mga plataforma sila. Ang nagkakaiba lang sila sa paano nila pinapaliwanag yun. Kasi yung iba, pinapaliwanag nila ang plataforma nila sa pamamagitan ng debate. Si Marcos may ibang paraan. Pero hindi naman tama na sabihin na wala siyang ino-offer na plataforma. Ang ginagawa niya, yung plataforma niya, pinapabasa niya sa tao, pero yung kanyang message, pag siya nagsasalita na, mas less ang optics niya iba. So it looks like that is more effective. Kasi kung titingnan mo sa mga kampanya, ang mga tao na nanonood sa spectacle, hindi sila makikinig sa sustansya. Now also the question, why is it that people seem to like him even if, be that as it may, na hindi niya kinukommunicate yung kanyang platform sa poverty, etc. Nabanggit ko na yan kanina eh. Kasi nga, hindi natin nalalaman kung itong mga to nagmamatter sa botante. Sinasabi lang importante ito sa akin. Pero yan ba ay ginagamit mo sa pagdesisyon mo kung sino iboboto? Yan ang kulang na tanong.
Professor Contreras.
I think that is something that needs to be addressed. We could not simplify because if we keep on pushing for that kind of angle, then we are again putting the Filipino, parang hindi very two-dimensional ang ating analysis ng Filipino, na parang madali siyang lokohin of the Italiano gold. I'm sure some people are buying into that. Marami naman taong ganun on both sides. But to reduce the support of the front runner sa kababawan or sa hindi nag-iisip is really what makes people angry. Okay? This is really what people find offensive. Na parang when you support this guy, then you must not be thinking because you're not thinking about your interest.
Right. But Professor Contreras, the fact remains that he hasn't communicated much about his platform, right? And that's not for lack of trying on the media's part. We have tried. They ambush him at every campaign sortie. We have invited him numerous times on the show to talk about the platforms. But other than what he said about rice and nuclear power, we don't know much. That's why there's a perception that he doesn't have a platform.
Well, like I said, iba-iba kasing style ng pag-communicate eh. I don't know how you did it, but when I was preparing to become a panel members, I saw the platforms of all candidates. I saw it for Lenny, for Ping, even Isko, who's a non-appearance in the DCRH Manila Times interview, meron siyang plataforma. So I think it's incumbent upon, if Mohammed doesn't go to the mountain, maybe the mountain should go to Mohammed. You have to look for it. I think that's the problem. Kasi nakikita ko naman ng mga tables sa mga ginagawa ang mga iba na anong standing natin sa ganito, anong standing ganito. Saan kinuha yung mga stand na yun ni Marcos? From nothing? From nowhere? Diba? So yun yung point. I think kaya nagagalit ang mga tao. In a way, I'm sorry to tell you this, but one of the reasons why many people are also nagiging parang they go to Marcos, inaandun yung effect na parang siya na yung tuloy, sana nakakita na yung front runner, yung ba yung underdog? Kasi siya nga yung ina-atake, binabalatan siya left and right. Okay? So which is not good. Kasi parang ba't naging underdog ito siya nga yung front runner, di ba? Pero lumalabas kasi siya nga yung binibira ng husto And I think one of the things that is this unbalanced representation in the media that is being perceived, and I'm not saying it's good or correct or fair, pero yun ang conclusion ng mga tao ng supporters niya na parang inaapi-api siya, hindi nakikita, sinasabi na wala naman siyang plataforma, yan, nakikita naman, nababasa naman nila, nakikita nila sa TikTok, nababasa nila sa Facebook, sinishare ng mga tao na supporter niya. Bakit hindi niyo makita?
Okay. Ronald, Mr. Lamas, what do you think?
Well, katulad nga nung sinabi ni Regina, no? Parang wala naman nagsabi na wala siyang platform. Ang sinasabi ay hindi niya pinapaliwanag yung mga platform dahil hindi naman siya humaharap sa media, hindi naman siya humaharap sa debate, no? Na pinag-uusapan yung plataforma. Baka maunawaan pa ng mga tao nung hindi siya dumalo kay Jessica Soho. Sabi niya, bias. Pero COMELEC debates, hindi ka dadalo, no? Paliwanag mo naman na maigi. Paano yun lang yung kakaunting oportunidad para ipaliwanag yung plataforma mo, no? Yun yung sinasabi. Ngayon, sinasabi lumalabas sa face. Yun yung sinasabi natin. Baka nga, objectively, looking at his strategy, baka nga siya yung mas may effective na strategy na hindi nagdedwell sa platform, nagdedwell sa imagery, nagdedwell sa mga memes, no? Kaya nga sinasabi natin, in terms of strategy, baka nga effective yung kanyang strategy. Kaya nga number 1 siya. Kaya nga, baka nga kung tama yung survey, no? Bukas, baka siya yung manalo. Pero ang sinasabi lang natin kanina, no? Doon pinag-uusapan kasi yung survey na ito yung mga issues na lumalabas. Bakit itong mga issues na ito ay hindi nagiging batayan ng pagpili ng kandidato? So medyo magkaiba, no? Yung lumalabas na mga issues sa survey ng mga na-survey na concerns nila sa magiging presidente at yung sino yung pinakamataas sa mga survey. No, yun yung sinasabi natin kanina na may disconnect. No? Kaya pinag-uusapan natin kanina, usually sa mga kampanya, ang pinupuntahan ng mga tao ay ng kandidato ay yung least common denominator. Yung mas pinakamadaling maunawaan o yung pinakamadaling makita. No? Pero, ang sinasabi kasi natin, halimbawa sa ibang mga modern democracy, mas intense yung diskusyon about platforms. No? Mas intense yung mga debate. Halimbawa, pag hindi ka dumalo sa debate sa US, hindi ka dumalo ng debate sa Europe, sigurado talo ka. No? Yun yung isang kaibahan natin sa mga mas developed na mga democracies. No?
So you're saying it's not necessarily the lack of platform, but the non-discussion or non-elaboration of the platform.
At yun yung reflection ng ating party system. No? Ano ba naman itong mga partido ngayon na dala-dala ng mga presidentiable? Ito ay mga partido na hindi kilala. At lalong hindi kilala yung kanilang plataforma and what they stand for. Dahil nga, exactly, hindi mahalaga, no? Sa ating political culture, sa ating political discourse. No? Na sana in the future, mas evolve yan into something more substantial.
Oh. Pero nga, saan natin gustong pumunta? I mean, what kind of a discussion in the end would we want, or could we afford to have for something as important as the presidency? I mean, on one hand, sabi nga, Prof, ang sabi ni Ronald kasi, baka in one way of looking at it is that maybe that's a more practical strategy, the non-discussion of, I don't know if non-discussion is the right word for it.
If we want to develop, if we really want our politics to be platform-based, and Ronald is correct, it is structural. The problem is structural. And it's not just the problem of Marcos. It's a problem of the structure. Our parties are, in fact, shells, empty shells.
Yes.
They're just docking ports, to where you can dock your political ambitions, then sail away from it when it becomes convenient. It is basically important to strengthen the party system because the party is a party that has to bear an ideology because debates and policy differences will come out of ideologies. What our parties, lahat naman sila nagpalit ng partido. Sino ba? Si Mrs. Robredo, dati liberal, naging independent. Yung iba, si Marcos, Partido Federal ng Pilipinas. So, di ba, saan ang gagaling po? Hindi mo alam, naniniwala ba sa federal system? Di ba? So, yun yung point na dapat nating tingnan. Hindi ito problema lang ni Marcos, hindi ito problema lang ni Robredo. Problema natin to kasi lagi natin pinipili na pag-usapan ang plataforma when in fact to the voters it may not resonate. And why is it? Because the supply side of politics also doesn't want to dwell into it. The politicians who are running, including Mr. Marcos, wouldn't dwell on that because it's not a winnable proposition. Kung mangyari manalo siya ngayon with a whopping 60%, then it validates that kind of model. So that is something that we need to think about. How are we going to change that? Kasama na dyan yung reforma sa campaign finance, sa reforma sa paglilipat ng partido, marami tayong dapat tingnan. So, structural problem yan.
Yeah.
So, hindi, it's just a problema lang yan ni BBM o problema lang itong eleksyon. Kahit tayo mag-usap-usap tungkol sa plataforma, in fact, ang plataforma, madaling gawin eh. Ang tanong nito, nakaugat ba yan sa ideolohiya? Kasi kung ang plataforma mo gagawin mo tapos parang chapsuy, hindi mo na maintindihan, para kang nasa isang palengke na di mo alam kung anong pinagkaiba-iba. Samantalang ang importante, saan nang gagaling ang plataforma? Nang gagaling yan sa ideological differences sa mga partido na wala naman tayo.
I think we all agree on that, Prof.
Prof.
I think we all agree on that, the need for political party reform to be established and pushed by whoever gets into power.
Yes.
We've had so many false starts hindi natutuloy-tuloy.
Kaya nga, dapat ang ginagawa natin dyan, kailangan merong magsimula niya kasi
So maybe the question, Prof, maybe the question to you is if Marcos were to win, do you expect him to change the system? I mean, you're right. This year in particular, we noticed that parties were even less
Nalusaw ang mga
significant.
partido.
Ang dami nag-endorse or nag-share ng candidates. A lot of them didn't have standard bearers.
It was
Would
bad
he
enough
be the
before,
one?
ngayon talagang nalusaw eh.
Exactly. So is he the one to change the system?
Alam mo, Reg, lalo pang nalusaw sa local air level. Parang nawala na yung saysay na parang, teka, magkalaban to ba't isang ini-endorse ng kandidato na presidente? Di ba? Napaka-postmodern na ng ating sistema. Ang tawag ko dyan, postmodern, wala nang narrative, wala nang lahat na fluid, lahat na negotiable. Ngayon, ang point ko doon, si Marcos ba, pwede magbago niyan? Well, I doubt it. If he found the model winnable, hindi develop. It's not going to change it. So it has come from somewhere, from a movement. Maybe it could come from the political opposition. If in case the surveys are correct, that Marcos is going to win big, I think the opposition should begin consolidating and offering an alternative that will not be offensive and offending people. It should be an alternative that will be inclusive, embracing, converting. Dapat yun ang gawin. Kasi I'm telling people na, alam mo kung nagsimula ang kampanya ni Lenny from the very start doon sa house to house, nagsimula siyang doon sa kampanya na puso sa puso. Hindi niya na lang pinansing tungkol yung narrative ni Marcos at talagang nagtutok sa kanya. Siguro baka na ibang trajectory. Baka yung curve na pinapakita niyo sa inyong screen dyan, baka medyo hindi masyadong malayo yung agwat ng dalawang guhit. Baka mas malapit. Kasi ang ano doon parang ang biniram agad yung narrative. Kanina, binanggit na parang yung pag-start, si Bob kanina, sabi niya, nag-disagree siya na nang sinabi ko na masama yung start na nagsimula ka na ayaw mo kay Marcos. I think I still stand on that. Kasi di ba sinabi ko nga, napaka-powerful na narrative sa lipunan natin ang diehard Duterte supporter at ang Marcos loyalist. Malakas babanggain mo yan. So dapat, and they're rearing for a fight, and they have the numbers. You don't fight the large number. The best way is, pinabayaan mo. Dinid mo. Dapat ang ginawa, nag-start ka on something that is positive, inclusive, because you want to convert, you want to take away votes from these two, these two solid, wall. Ay hindi eh. Ngayon lang nag-change gear. Nung makita na yung mga strategy ay hindi na nag-work, na offensive, yung let me educate you, yung mga, yung mga tinatawag na bobo ang botante, if you don't think, that's why you are not think. Yung mga ganyan, it offends people. Buti kung ang ino-offend mo lang yung kandidato, it offends voters. So I think that's the big difference now. Why in this a negative campaigning that is against a candidate works because people love spectacle. Di ba ang mga Pilipino pag may nagsasabunutan sa kalye, nanonood, nagpapalakpakan, natutuwa ka? We love spectacle. Hindi kasi tayo yun eh. Pero pag inaway, ikaw na ang inaway, iba na yun. At yun ang dimension na iba sa negative campaigning na nangyayari ngayon.
All right,
Ang
Professor.
negative campaign is no longer just against candidates. The negative campaign targeted voters. And
Professor
that is very, very
Contreras,
fatal.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to leave it there for now because we do have to go to a break. Mamaya na yung sabong. We're gonna pause for a very short break. Like I said, this is Bilang Pilipino 2022 here on One News, all sides, all the time. Stay with us.
Bilang Pilipino. Bilang Pilipino. Bilang Pilipino. Bilang Pilipino.
And welcome back. This is Bilang Pilipino 2022 here on One News. I'm Ed Lingao.
And I'm Regina. You're watching us from the One News Election Data Monitoring Center here in Reliance, Mandaluyong.
While waiting for the transmission of votes, of course, we need to know where will this bulk of votes come from. Let's hear from Carlo Pamintuan. Carlo, I know you have a whole lot of data out there. I'll leave it up to you where you want to bring us.
We will have to rely on the pre-game data because as you can
Pre-game
see,
data.
as of now, it's still a big fat zero in terms of transmission. So wala pa po
We're waiting
tayong
for
nakukuha.
we're waiting
Yep.
for some movement there because as of what 20-30 minutes ago ang sabi ng PPCRV reporter natin may pumasok ng 500 precincts. Pero mukhang wala pang galaw diyan.
Not at all. Wala pa pong lumalabas. As of 8:04 this evening, we have not yet received a single transmission. So,
May connection ka naman, ha? Baka mamaya wala kang load.
malinaw at mabilis ang connection natin dito sa TV5 office, sir.
Hindi malinaw.
Now, so we will have to talk about kung saan manggagaling yung mga boto that we will see reflected on this meter a little later on. We're expecting some of the transmissions to start trickling down upon the hours. But now let's talk about the top 10 vote-rich provinces. Saan nga ba manggagaling ang karamihan ng mga boto that will determine the leadership of our government from now until the next 6 years. As you can see, Cebu gets a lion's share in terms of the provinces, with Cebu City, Lapu-Lapu City, and Mandaue City with a total of 3.2 million registered voters. Susunod dyan, Cavite with 2.3 million. Pangasinan, including Dagupan City, is at 2.1. Laguna, 2,045,000. Bulacan has 2 million. Negros Occidental with Bacolod City has 1.9. Batangas has 1.8. Iloilo with Iloilo City at 1.6. Rizal at 1.6. And Pampanga with Angeles City at 1.5 million. Diyan po manggagaling yung karamihan sa mga botong makikita natin that we will see transmitted a little later on. Ito naman ang ating heat map of where the next biggest number of voters are coming from. Hindi na po dyan kasama yung mga nasa listahan natin of top 10 vote-rich provinces. You can see the darker the color of the red, the more votes there are. No, you can see La Union at 0.53. Bataan also has a good number of votes. Even in Mindanao, where you can see Masbate also getting 5.59 million votes in terms of just the votes in Luzon. Shifting over to Visayas, you can see na marami ring boto yung manggagaling sa Negros Oriental, in Bohol, in Southern Leyte, Eastern Samar, Aklan, and Antique. And of course, we all know that in terms of the surveys, dinodumina ni Bongbong Marcos ang Mindanao right now. All of the votes almost going red. And there is a lion's share of votes to be won in Mindanao as well, including Lanao del Norte, Misamis Occidental, Zamboanga has 0.7 million, Zamboanga del Sur has 1.1. So dyan po manggagaling yung mga boto na aasahan natin. We will start to see results a little later on at night. Ngayon po, wala pa tayong nakikita in terms of our transmission. So stick with us through our coverage of the elections to see when the first trickle of votes will start to reflect.
Well, Carlo, I think it would interest a lot of people if you show us anong babantayan natin mamaya pag nagsimulang pumasok yung mga boto, anong klaseng mga data ang pwede mong ipakita dyan sa iyong mahiwagang touchscreen.
We can actually see, Sir Ed, yung pwede nating silipin is yung huling first choice presidential preference by regions para mas ma-appreciate natin, mas makita natin where those numbers will be coming from. If we could flash that on the screen right now, let's run through some of the choices ng ating mga na-survey na kababayan kung sino ba yung kanilang iboboto, coming from where. As you can see, pinaliwanag na natin kung sino yung may maraming boto. Let's see a little later on kung sino naman yung mga namamayagpag doon sa mga regions kung saan madami yung boto.
But ito, I think maganda ipakita rin to eh. This is something we had specially made dito sa ating touchscreen. Okay.
Let's refresh it, sir. Yeah. We go to heat map.
Yeah, nawala yung There you go. Okay.
Heat map.
Okay. Let's look at the heat maps. Ito lang yung sneak preview ng maaari natin makita mamaya, di ba? For example, pag nagsimulang pumasok yan, pag simulang pumasok yan, you will have, of course, a graphical representation kung sino nauuna sa mga kandidato. That's an easy representation. But if you look at the heat maps, then we can also be showing this. A map of the Philippines at magkakakulay dyan kung sinong namumuna sa aling probinsya, color-coded. So depende kung anong kulay na nakasign sa mga kandidato, makikita mong umaangat dito yung kulay kung saan sila nangunguna. So quick look pa lang, okay, you're number 1 in this province, and so on down the line. As well, we will be showing later on yung tatawag nating bar chart race. Siyempre, wala pa pumapasok dito. But later on, you will see here the 10 presidential candidates in this case. And you will see here a timeline na gumagalaw.
Yeah.
As the numbers come in, makikita mo na gumagalaw din yung bars.
Quite literally a race.
A race, talagang parang karera. At pag nagbabago yung order, bumabaliktad ng ganun. So nag-a-adjust siya as we go along. So it's so easy to see kung paano yung karera. The same goes for President, the Vice President. We can drill down to Metro Manila, the Metro Manila race for the Vice Presidency, the provincial races, and so on the line. Even the overseas.
We can actually take a look at 2016
Oo,
if you
maganda
want
yan.
a sample
Maganda yan.
of our bar chart race kung ano yung nangyari. As we can.
It's playing, pero medyo mas maganda ata yung senators eh.
Ito po, nagumpisa na yung karera natin. No? As you can see in the initial transmission of
2016.
votes, in 2016 for the vice presidential elections, nanguna itong si Bongbong Marcos early in the transmission. As you can see, it was a two-person race. Nauna si BBM, pumapangalawa si Vice President Leni Robredo as Cayetano Escudero Trillanes and Onasan brought up the rear. It was clear from the very start na yun lang ang habulan. It was between Marcos and Robredo for the Vice President.
And I think what's interesting here is that, see here, you have a timeline here. You can move forward and back depending on what time you want to look at the timeline.
But this was, I think, specifically the most interesting part
It's around 3 o'clock.
of the timeline.
Yeah, the most interesting part will be around 3 o'clock,
There.
thereabouts.
Yeah.
Okay, at 2,
Yep.
sige, play mo, Bok. At 2:30, leading pa si Bongbong Marcos, and pagdating ng around what? 3 o'clock,
3:15.
thereabouts.
Yeah.
Nanguna na si Leni Robredo, nagbago na ng order. But it's also interesting to look at it from this point of view. Here kasi you will see in color the provinces where the results are still coming in. The ones that are colored black are the provinces where there is no transmission at that current time. So if you go back a little bit, okay, let's say
2:59,
2:59. Leading pa si Bongbong Marcos, pero you can see the provinces where Bongbong Marcos would be
na.
or could be leading.
Yeah.
Tapos na ang transmission
Yep.
more or less. So wala na masyado pumapasok. At pumapasok na yung ibang probinsya where Leni Robredo appear to have been leading in 2016.
And it will flash green for you to better appreciate where the votes are coming from upon the move where Leni Robredo, the Vice President, overtook Bongbong Marcos in 2016.
So sige, play mo. And as you go down the timeline, there you go. Nagbabago na yung kulay. Nakikita mo kung sino ang tumigil ng transmission dahil maaaring tapos na yung transmission nila at sarado na yung tindahan or maaaring nagka-problema, nagka-aberya. But that's another way of looking at it.
Right now, it's just a waiting game though, as we're still waiting for the first transmission.
Again, these are numbers from 2016.
2016 for the Vice Presidential
But just to
race.
give you a sneak preview, excuse me, as to what we can show you with the 2022 numbers as they come in. Okay, Carlo,
Thank you,
maraming
sir.
salamat.
Maraming salamat din, sir.
So baka may mapakita ka pang magic dyan. Wrong word to use.
All right, let's bring the discussion back to where we were before the break. If we could just flash the chart again showing the past presidential elections. Earlier, Ronald, you said something interesting, which I latched onto. You said you can't call it a return of the Marcoses because they were always there, right? Nandun sila all the way back from the 90s. Here, the presidential results. Tell us why.
Yes, nung
Hindi naman talaga sila nawala, is what you're saying.
yes, nung nanalo si Cory, nung naging presidente siya, there were 9 coup d'etat. Most of which ay balak ibalik yung mga Marcoses. And one of them almost succeeded. Yung 89
December 89
coup d'etat, no? Na nakialam na nga yung mga Amerikano to defend Malacanang dahil mismo yung Air Force ay palusob ng Malacanang at that time.
Right.
So, ibig sabihin, pro-Marcos forces, especially in the military, ay very strong. No? Even nung bumagsak si Marcos. Nung 91, bumalik si Imelda at yung pamilya niya, at nung 92, tumakbo siya bilang presidente. Kasabay ni Danding Cojuangco, no? A Marcos Cabinet Secretary, crony, etc. So kung nagsama yung dalawa, talo si Ramos. So as early as 92, pwede sanang nakabalik yung mga Marcoses. No? Fast forward to 98, nanalo si Erap Estrada, no? Landslide. No? Pero si Erap Estrada was the vice presidential candidate of Danding Cojuangco. At si Erap Estrada, inaamin niya na pro-Marcos siya. No? So, 98, may presidente ka na inaamin na Marcos yung kanyang idol. No? Tapos, yung pumalit sa kanya, si Arroyo, no? ay became one of the most unpopular president post-EDSA. No? Pero at the end of the term ni Arroyo, naging senador si BBM. No? So, national yan, yung Senate. So merong traction. Merong traction yung Marcos kung ikaw ay magiging senador. No? At fast forward, sa 2016, ay na-elect yung isang presidente na isa sa pinakamahalaga para sa Marcoses as an enabler, as a supporter, no? At as an endorser. No? Kaya all throughout that, mali siguro na sabihin na nawala yung mga Marcos, tapos ngayon sila babalik.
It's not a comeback.
Yes,
They were always there.
Nandyan sila all throughout. In varying degrees, no? In relative strength at saka weaknesses. No? The bailiwicks remain strong in the north, no? In the south. At yung mga allies nila, nandyan din. No?
I think that's what a lot of foreign media get wrong about the politics here, because when you see the headlines for a lot of their coverage, it's always the return or the comeback of the Marcoses.
Yes. Dahil hindi naman nila nakita yung nuances ng ating domestic politics at saka national politics. At saka sa mga dayuhan, sa mga foreigners, yung Marcos brand ay malinaw sa kanila. No? It's Imelda Marcos. It's hindi naman nila nakita yung mga anak na naging vice governor, naging congressman, eventually both naging senador.
But Ronald, that brings up the question, and I'll also bring in Professor Contreras-Sira. But that also does bring up the question as to whether or not the general public had ever really rejected the Marcoses to begin with in the last 36 years. Considering what you talked about na in 1992 kung nagsanib puwersa lamang si Imelda at saka si Danding, sila dapat ang nanalo kung nagsanib puwersa sila. And then 1998 with Erap, who was clearly pro-Marcos, and so on down the line. So let me ask you guys, you gentlemen, that question. Was there, if you look at that, look at it from that perspective, was there ever really a popular rejection of the Marcos family in politics in the last 36 years?
Well,
Professor Contreras.
first of all, I would like to agree with Ronald on the fact that the Marcos never actually left. I think that's and Reg correctly pointed it out. The Western media is not getting it right. And that's right, because no one says about politics, they seem not to, they just close off. And the reason is because EDSA, what happened in EDSA, actually is not, we call it a revolution. I don't want to be academic about it, but it is not actually a revolution. It is a popularly backed coup d'etat. It is a civilian backed coup. And so there was no transformation of the structures of society. Marcos physically left the country, but the structures were there. The consciousness were there. And so it's not just something that remained in the consciousness of the older people. It was even transmitted to the young. EDSA was confined to Metro Manila and the urban centers of Cebu. It is very much a middle class to upper class movement. And so, in a way, it is one that is not complete. And one of the things that you might want to ask is, why is it that right now the anti-Marcos forces seem to find it hard to really convince people about the anti-Marcos narrative, that we keep on talking about historical revisionism? I would say that there is no history to revise because the history was not completely written yet. Okay? It is basically an incomplete transformation. It is not yet completed, and then it was saddled by the ineptitude, by the failure of the succeeding administrations to deliver what people perceive. The people, I think, are willing to give the political elites chance. Na baka magbago ang buhay natin. O tama, sabi nila, alisin si Marcos. O sige, magbago ba buhay natin? Hindi nagbago. So I think I think Rodrigo Duterte was just a dress rehearsal. I don't call it a return of the Marcoses. They're just rethinking. It's a rethinking of something that was interrupted in 1986, if this happens. So they never left. The shadows and imprints were here. The structures were there. And their elites just changed colors and then they came back. And said, alam mo yung mga elite, political elite na yun, magbabalikan yan pag nanalo si Bongbong, lilipat lahat yan, magiging, even though so did not endorse him, they're going to move to the supermajority.
Pero Prof, let me before I bring Ronald in, let me ask you about that. Sabi niyo kasi history has not been completely written yet. I suppose in certain aspects that is correct, but also in certain aspects I suppose it has already been written. I mean, there have been Supreme Court, and you have written about this. I've seen your columns about this.
Yeah.
There have been Supreme Court decisions already on the corruption cases against Bongbong Marcos. I'm sorry, not Bongbong. Against Senior, against Marcos Senior. And you also have acknowledged that in your columns. So
But
at
it's-
least as far as those abuses are concerned, that much seems pretty clear already, and there have been recoveries already at a major level.
But to see a complete history, a court ruling doesn't make a complete history. You have to understand that the court is a passive arbiter of truth. You know, it only decides on things that is brought to its attention. The job is for historians to uncover. The job for academics is to uncover and then to discover and to open up even the inconvenient truths. Okay? We didn't have a truth commission to sort of open up everything, just like what happened to other countries. So people will always see partial stories. And so these stories will remain to be hijacked by those elites who would be convenienced by it. And so there will always be something that is not said. And there will always be something that will be said, but with a spin. That is why I said it is not complete. So because there is it is still contested. And the fact is that EDSA is not even something that it failed to penetrate the worldview, we call it in the social sciences, the habitus of people, the consciousness, because it was confined to a certain demographic sector and a geographical sector. Eh hindi naman baka hindi naramdaman yan sa mga rural areas.
Yeah.
Okay? Kaya hanggang ngayon meron pa rin silang memory ni Marcos. Kaya napakadali nilang mag-ipuan, tawag doon pagpupuo na pag-aanito kay Bongbong. Dahil nga hindi naman na-break eh.
Prof, let me bring, I'm sorry, I keep referring to you as Prof. It's out of force of habit. Pero let me also bring in Mr. Llamas here. Sir.
Well, una, nag-disagree ako na yung EDSA was a civilian-backed coup. Dahil mismo yung nag-launch ng coup, inaamin nila na ang balak nila ay magtayo ng military junta, no? Kung sakaling nanalo sila against Marcos, no? Huwag niyo kalimutan, si Enrile yung namuno doon sa coup na yon, no? Kasama yung mga Reformed Armed Forces movement na eventually launched several coups against Cory. No, it's more like, yes, there was a coup, no? There was a coup. Perhaps they want to save themselves bago bumagsak si Marcos, no? Kaya sila yung gustong pumalit na gobyerno. Pero the people uprising, the people power which happened when the coup failed was real, no? Was real. Ikalawa, tingin ko ay merong revision ng history pag sinabi mo na walang nangyaring human rights violations nung panahon ni Marcos. My mother was working in the Department of National Defense then. Office
Really?
for Detainees Affairs, ODA. Sila yung umahandle ng mga political detainees. Habang lumalaki ako, no, sa kanya ko natutunan, hindi sa mga aktivista, yung nangyayari sa loob ng mga detention centers. Sino yung ni-rape, sino yung tinorture, etc. Sa nanay ko na nagtatrabaho sa gobyerno. Yung father ko nasa NAPOLCOM National Police Commission. Sa kanya ko natutunan yung mga cases ng mga abuses at saka ng mga corruption. Hindi ko natutunan sa mga aktivista. Natutunan ko doon sa mga magulang ko na nasa gobyerno. Ibig sabihin, totoo yung nangyayari na yan. Yung plunder na nangyayari, hindi naman nanggaling sa hangin yung $4 billion na na-recover ng PCGG. No? Huwag na natin pag-usapan yung mga sapatos ni Imelda. Yung $4 billion na lang. At yung mga pending cases sa mga bangko, no, around the world, dun sa ninenegotiate pa ng gobyerno na makuha. So meron talaga nangyari, no? Na plunder, may kwan, no? Hindi yan galing kay Ed, no? Galing yan, may pinanggalingan yung napakalaking kwan na yan. Yun yung nung sinasabi na napakaunlad natin nung panahon ng martial law. Of course not. Nag-deteriorate yung ating economy, no? Of course, it's a convergence of a lot of factors. Pero hindi mo pwedeng sabihin na napakaunlad natin nung panahon na yan. Yun yung sinasabi na revision, no? Yun yung sinasabi na revision na ito ay hindi nangyari at ito yung golden age, no? Ng Pilipinas nung panahon na yan. It's as if saying na hindi nangyari yung Holocaust, na mismo yung United Nations ay tinutulan, no? Dahil may mga revisionists din, no? Around the world, no? So yun lang yung sinasabi na revision, no? Ngayon, syempre may ang isang naging problema ng mga EDSA institutions na sinasabi ay nag-fail sila na i-educate yung mga tao dito sa mga nangyaring ito. Hindi napasok sa curriculum natin eh. Yang mga bahagi na yan ng ating kasaysayan. Na I agree, kasaysayan naman nagpapatuloy pang mag-unfold eh. Pero at that particular moment, nangyari yan. At that particular moment, maraming mga biktima ng human rights, torture, no, assassination, etc. Nangyari yan. No? Mahirap sabihin na hindi yan nangyari. No? At yung pagtayo ng Commission on Human Rights ay isa sa basihan dahil nangyari yung mga bagay na yan. No?
And you have recovery, and you have compensation already
Yes.
given out.
Yes,
by government
may
itself.
nakuha sa mga Swiss banks na ginamit para sa pag-compensate nung at least 10,000 na nag-apply for compensation. No? Yun yung, at dumaan yan sa rigorous na proseso. Dumaan yan sa rigorous na proseso. Hindi lang sa isang gobyerno, kung hindi several governments. No? Several governments. So mahirap sabihin na hindi nangyari yan. Yun yung sinasabi namin na revision.
I'm glad you guys brought up the subject because now it's time to talk about social media's role, right? So various fact checkers, various researchers have said a massive and well-funded social media campaign is what allowed the Marcoses to rehabilitate their name, right? Various media outlets, local, PCIJ, Rappler, Inquirer, and so on and so forth, pati foreign media, like the Washington Post, have looked into this. And they all say there's a massive disinformation campaign behind them. Now, the question is, again, if the surveys are right, Professor Contreras, and Bongbong Marcos wins, how do you expect him to deal with the social media platforms? And how does it change the face of elections moving forward?
Well, I am not a fortune teller, or I cannot see things. I could not second guess what Mr. Marcos would do. I would only do, well, I can only answer that by saying what I wish it would do. Okay? Kung anong pwede niyang gawin para mabago ang trajectory ng ating kasaysayan. At para sa akin, sa tingin ko, sana ang gawin niya, i-prove niya ang mga haka-haka natin lahat na mali tayo. Yun ang best thing na pwede mangyari. Na lahat ng takot natin, lahat ng takot na wawasakin niya, ang gigibain niya ang bansa, kaya papalitan niya ang kasaysayan, sana hindi mangyari. I don't usually answer questions like that, Reg, because I don't want to speculate. I cannot second guess what Mr. Marcos is thinking about. Wala akong empirical evidence. Gusto ko kasi lagi nakabase lang sa empirical evidence sa sagot ko. So, but that is my wish. My wish, if he can prove us all wrong, that would be best. However, if he doesn't, then I guess we have to do something to address it more in a more productive way. We need to, if he's going to repeat the same mistakes as his father, if he's going to do the things that we expect him to do, many of us fear that he will do, then I think we have to change tactics. Kasi ang ginagawa ng mga critic niya kung pare-pareho lang naman, hindi magbabago tayo ng outcome. We have to innovate, we have to change our political strategy and how to deal with him.
Right.
We have to think of a better way.
Right.
Sir, I think we all agree that we all hope that whatever concerns any of us might have right now would be proven wrong. Whatever concerns any of us would have if Marcos sits as president. However, let me zero in on some specific concerns. For example, the Marcos family has been consistent in saying that there is no such thing as ill-gotten wealth. There's no such thing as money stolen from the Philippine
Well,
government.
if that is the case, then they are lying. It has already been established in court.
Yes, sir. Yeah,
There is an empirical evidence. A court has already a judge, although it's not a criminal case. It is a civil case, but it still established that fact. And it was so. I think even but what indicate that those who are still on appeal, then I would submit to the majesty of the court to a final determination. But I think if that is the case, then indeed I would agree that that is a revisionist approach, an attitude. It's a fact. Now the thing is, what are they going to do about it? And what are we going to do about it?
But Prof, that's exactly the point, because a lot of his supporters don't believe that the ill-gotten wealth case was ever proven. They believe that sinisiraan lang sila ng kabilang side.
Kasi nga that because I think the way to transform minds is basically to change the way you make people believe that. If you're going to, ako kasi bilang educator, transformative education sa amin sa Lasal, teach minds, touch hearts, and transform lives. Pag transformative ang education mo, hindi ka nagsisimula sa isang, kaya nga na yung word na let me educate you is not a good way to educate because it presumes superiority, inferiority. Of course, we know that it is wrong. But hindi mo dapat ipinapamukha yun eh. How do you make them believe that you are right without making them lose face? So I think it is a specific strategy that applies to this particular instance as well as to any kind of instance. Kasi if you are going to hiyain mo ang tao, tawagin mong boko sa harapan niya, tawagin mong enabler na magnanakaw, sa halip na maniwala yan sa'yo, you're just going to not do the things that you want them to do out of spite. That is basic psychology.
Yes, sir. Sir, that's a point well taken, but that's in reference to people who may end up arguing with you on social media. But let me ask you this: what if down the line Bongbong Marcos or the government, if he does sit in Malacanang, pushes that line further, because that has been a consistent line from the Marcos family for so long. Isn't that something that we would have to address sooner or later? If not now, when?
Well, it will have to be our burden to show that to deal with that. The educators, the media, but like I said, there has to be a better way of dealing with questions like that. Because remember, you are dealing with, if he's going to win, he's going to win with a supermajority. Majority or supermajority. It could be 50 plus, it could be 60 plus, we don't know. It will unfold down soon. So you have to deal with a very popular president. And you have to be, politics is not just about making yourself be heard that you're right. Politics is about conversion. Politics is about transformation.
About conversion, yes.
And you have to have a strategy. Hindi matagal na natin ginagawa yan, di ba? Matagal na natin paulit-ulit natin gagawin yung confrontation and it doesn't work. It will just lead to another electoral defeat.
Yes, sir. Well, very good points. I think this is a good discussion that we're having here. Pero sir, before we go to Agap, kasi we have to go into Agap. Pero sir, and I take your point that we have to change the way, I suppose, that we converse with each other. Pero in the end, we'll also have to look to the people on top, the people in charge, and hope, pray, and push that they push what is empirically proven.
Exactly.
Well, dapat kasi laging fact-based, dapat laging science-based, pero dapat hindi natin nalilimutan yung ugali ng Pinoy na kapwa. Alam mo, ang mga Pilipino, pag talaga lulubog ka kasi sa grassroots, malinaw kapag tayo kasi yun ang aking area of pinag-aaralan niya sa political science, yung mga indigenous ways of dealing with conflict. Talaga natin, hindi natin binabangga, nilalambing natin, nilalaro natin ang mga adversities, yung mga kaaway, nilalambing natin. May mga ganung klase tayong style.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ang challenge, paano natin i-elevate sa level ng national dialogue. Yun ang challenge. Na dapat pagtulungan at dapat maging strategy ng political opposition to Marcos. Kasi kung babanggain mo siya, babanggain mo ang isang dambuhala kung manalo siya sa eleksyon o the supermajority.
Right, right. Okay, let's leave it there for now because we have to go for a quick break. This is Bilang Filipino 2022 here on One News, all sides, all the time.
Bilang Pilipino. Bilang Pilipino.
Welcome back. This is Bilang Pilipino 2022 here on One News. I'm Regina.
And I'm Lingao. You're watching us from the One News Election Data Monitoring Center here in Reliance Street in Mandaluyong City. And votes are now coming in. Let's see who is taking an early lead so far. Carlo, can you give us a quick run-through?
Right now, the front runner is Bongbong Marcos with 958,219 votes. At second is Vice President Leni Robredo with 409,608, followed by Manny Pacquiao with 79,668. Isko Moreno Dumagoso at number 4 with 54,755. Senator Ping Lacson is at 5th with 26,387. Faisal Mangundato at 4,000. Ernie Abella 2,000. Leody de Guzman 2,400. Norberto Gonzalez at 2,200. And Jose Montemayor
I'm
at
sorry, Carlo. I have to
1,269.
break your train of thought there. If you check the Bilang Pilipino website, we now have more updated figures.
Here we go.
Okay, there you go.
These are the updated numbers that just came in. Bongbong Marcos with now 15,339,878, followed by still the Vice President Leni Robredo with 7,288,000. Manny Pacquiao remains at third with a slim lead over Isko Moreno Dumagoso. Pacquiao has 1.2 million as opposed to Dumagoso's 1.063, while Ping Lacson has 500,000 votes, 505,265. Those are your top 5 candidates, and that is so far.
These are so far the partial unofficial results coming into us from the transparency server from the Parish Pastoral Council for Responsible Voting over at USC. Maybe we can look at transmittal rates.
Let's check the transmission totals. So we are at 46.93%, which equates to 50,582.
Of 107,000 precincts. Almost half of all the number of... Okay, let's go back. Baka we have another update already. We want to check the heat maps, see what we have here. Okay, there you go. Yung kulay pula, dyan yung mga probinsya kung saan namumuna si Bongbong Marcos, as you can see here. Clearly, Northern, Central Luzon, and Calabarzon, except for Quezon Province, so far Bongbong Marcos siya. Bicol Region is still clearly with Leni Robredo. Here you can see the Samar Province. This is Northern Samar, which so far is Leni, and Eastern Samar, which is also Leni, and you have Samar itself, which is Bongbong Marcos. Here you have, I think this is Leyte. Leyte and Southern Leyte, Bongbong Marcos. Cebu, so far, Bongbong Marcos. Bohol, Bongbong Marcos so far. Negros Oriental is still Bongbong Marcos so far. Leni Robredo with Negros Occidental. I think, that's Leni Robredo. And of course, you have Western Visayas, which is Antique, Aklan, Capiz, and so on down the line, Leni Robredo. Take a look at Mindanao.
We see different colors in Mindanao. I think this.
That's Lanao del Sur.
Yep. Faisal
Faisal
Mangundato
Mangundato.
getting a majority
Sorry,
of
Mangundato,
his,
who is, of course, from Marawi City.
and he is ranking number 1 in Lanao del Sur. I think we can also check this part
Sarangani.
where, Manny Pacquiao is leading, at least in Sarangani, with 3,053 votes. So it is still the top 2 of Bongbong Marcos and Leni Robredo, currently ranking as top 2 still right now. We will have a breakdown of these numbers on a regional basis just in a few minutes.
So far, if you look at the totals here, you have, I think, more or less around the 40 million votes tallied so far. Again, these are partial, unofficial numbers. 15 million for Bongbong Marcos plus another 7 million for Leni Robredo. That's 22 million, 23 million. I'm sorry, around 24 million votes so far. You still have around 40 million votes that you still have to count. So more or less almost half, or just about approaching half. There, you have the vice presidential race over there.
We
Tell us
now
about
are
it.
showing the vice presidential race numbers so far. About 46% of the votes have already come in. Sara Duterte leading everyone with 14,973,000. And of course, Kiko Pangilinan, the running mate of Vice President Leni Robredo, with 4.6 million. Senate President Sente Tito Soto has 4.197 million. Doc Willie Ong at 1 million, and Lito Atienza, the running mate of Senator Manny Pacquiao, at 106,280.
Why don't we take a look at the comparatives with the heat map from 2016 compared to 2022? There you go. Marcos versus Robredo. See if it's been updated already. Okay, there you go. This is 2016 versus so far what we have with 2022. Again, as we talked about earlier, yung kulay orange, that is Bongbong Marcos country, and the yellow colors in 2016, of course, Leni Robredo country in the 2016 vice presidential race. Tell us about what we have so far from 2022 in comparison to 2016.
We're seeing a huge chunk of Mindanao, which is yellow back in 2016, turning out to be red. So it actually switched, at least in the numbers that we have, from Leni Robredo as Vice President to Bongbong Marcos as President for 2022. This is where a huge chunk of yellow turned into red in the span of 6 years.
And again, as you see here, Western Visayas is still Leni Robredo country. Also, Negros Occidental is still Leni Robredo country so far, and portions of Samar, Leni Robredo country, and of course Bicol region. And I think this is Masbate, which so far is Leni Robredo country. But take a look at Palawan; it's already turned red.
Yep.
And as well, you're looking at Zambasulta, Zamboanga, Basilan, Sulu, Tawi-Tawi, clearly red. Also the Zamboanga Peninsula. Almost all of Central Mindanao, except for this is Lanao Sur. Well, Faisal Mangondato is number 1, of course, in Lanao del Sur.
A slim lead by Leni Robredo over Bongbong Marcos in Lanao del Sur. We can check out this area as well,
Sarangani.
where we expect Manny Pacquiao to be the number 1. But you can see, Bongbong Marcos was a close number 2 to Manny Pacquiao, while Leni Robredo only got 274 votes, counting from Sarangani.
We have the central account so far. 12
Ooh,
million
this is
with
where
Robin
the
Padilla
surprises
number
are
1,
coming.
di ba? And then Lauren Lagada number 2 with 12.2, Rafi Tulfo with 11 million, Sherwin Gatchalian with 10, Chisa Escudero with 10, and Mark Villar with 9.7. Alam mo, baka maganda rin tingnan dyan yung bar race ng senatorials. There. Is it moving? There you go.
Look,
There you go.
so maaga talaga na nauna yung mga boto for Robin Padilla.
Pero hindi pa siya masyadong updated compared to here.
Let's refresh it to see if we have the new numbers. I think the numbers on the screen
Okay,
are
medyo
still
mabagal pa siya. So this is
most
what we
current
have so far doon sa Central Race. Again, Robin Padilla with number 1, Lauren Lagada number 2, Rafi Tulfo number 3, and Win Gatchalian with number 4. Sinong surprises dito sa Central Race?
Number 1.
Siyempre, yung
First
pinaka
place.
Si Binoy.
comprehensive yung platform.
Okay.
Pinag-uusapan natin kanina. No? Si Robin Padilla.
Tsaka magaling kumanta.
Naka-isang kanta yan sa buong campaign.
But maliban sa kanya, sino yung, of course, this is still partial unofficial, no? But
Yeah.
sino yung mga kagulat-gulat at sino yung malabonics, kumbaga?
Parang ito naman yung mga nasa survey talaga.
Well, si Risa is at number 10. Earlier kasi she was
Between
she
12
was,
to 13.
she was floating somewhere at
Hindi
the
pa
edge.
sigurado she was gonna make
11.
it.
Si Binay, no, ay number 14. Sa mga surveys ay pasok siya sa 12 or nasa number 13 siya. No? So, hindi natin sigurado kung aangat pa in terms of percentage. Pero si Tulfo, medyo from number 1, naging
Bumaba.
number 3.
Bumaba eh.
Partly siguro dahil sa endorsement o non-endorsement ng iglesia. No? Partly. Pero sabi mo nga, ito ay less than 50% pa lang.
Carlo, can we look at the transmittals?
Before we get to the latest updates, can I just bring in
Sorry,
Professor
excited kami.
Contreras? Your initial reactions to the numbers we're seeing on the screen, partial and unofficial results.
Well, my initial feeling is that I'm glad that the surveys are validated. That was what I was afraid of as a person who teaches scientific surveys. I was hoping, sabi ko na sana mag-validate kasi ma-erode ang credibility ng science.
Yes, yes.
And what's happening right now is that it is emerging that the surveys are right. The Google Trends doesn't work, you know. So I think that's the initial that I'm getting right now. I'm not
so far,
interested. I'm more interested in that than in the rankings that we're in. Although I'm happy, for example, that some of the people that I voted for are there in the Senate. Of course, I always vote for a loser in the president. I don't know why, but I'm really shocked at Padilla. You know, and you know, I agree that this is a classic case of the absence really of a platform, so to speak. I agree. So
Prof,
if he retains his number one, that's something that's remarkable.
yeah. Prof, so far, the proportions seem to be right on the dot, at least as far as the surveys
Or
were
it could
concerned.
be a little bit more.
Yeah. Pero
12
diba,
million versus 7 million in about 30 million vote is kind of on the higher 50s. Or even about, higher 50s.
kasi ano ba yung nakita na kanina? Si Bongbong Marcos, Robredo with almost half lang of Bongbong Marcos so far.
Ganun naman talaga lumalabas sa survey. Yung
Yes, sir.
margin ni Marcos kay Lenny ay mas malaki pa doon sa boto ni Lenny. Kahit sa survey ganun.
And in a way, reflected din yung so far, yung ranking, Pacquiao coming in number 3.
The polls Asia. Because it's only the polls Asia
Versus,
where
Isko.
Well,
Pacquiao
actually,
was
that's a bit
third.
of a surprise because supposedly, in some of the surveys, Isko Moreno was number 3, supposedly. Because he's number 1 choice for second choice.
For second choice.
Correct.
Not
Tapos
in
naging
the-
number 4 pa siya.
Not in the latest surveys. No?
Of Pulse Asia. Kasi Pulse
At
Asia,
yun
number
yung
one.
Sa polls Asia number 3 si
At
Pacquiao.
yun ang sinasabi na baka epekto nung Easter
Sunday press
Sunday,
conference.
Easter Sunday press conference. Pero yun na, kanina ko pa gusto sanang ipasok yung Senate para hindi na pag-uusapan itong buong araw Na interesting din yung Senate dahil ito yung first time na possibly meron kang dalawang magkapatid na papasok, Cayetano, dalawang magkapatid na Estrada, mag-ina na Bilyar, mag-ama na Binay, no? At may mga bagong artista na papasok, no? Medyo amazing yan dahil una ko na politicized nung high school nung una ko narinig si Senator Pepe Diokno. Pero mukhang that was a lifetime ago, no? Sa Senado natin ngayon. No? Malinaw sa ating konstitusyon yung anti-dynasty, pero ito yata yung panahon na pinakamarami talagang
Dynasties.
magkakamag-anak sa ating Senado.
One other thing that's going to be interesting in the new Senate chamber is the lack of an opposition. Right?
Yes.
Si Senator Franklin Drilon is obviously out already. Senator Kiko Pangilinan, wala na rin. Natira na lang Senator Risa Ontiveros. How is that going to change anything, to think?
Lone opposition si
Dramatically.
Risa.
Dramatically.
Professor Contreras.
Yeah, parang nakikita ko dyan, parang lone opposition si Risa. But I think baka sumama sa kanya si Binay, si Nancy. But in the Senate politics is quite different,
Yeah. Yeah.
There are 24 independent
Republics.
So, we don't know.
Carlo, baka we can go. Sir,
Very quickly. We were talking about the reflection of the survey numbers to the numbers right now. And if you look at 46.93%, the 15,339,878 votes of Bongbong Marcos are actually on the dot at 57%. That is how accurate, at least at this stage, the last Pulse Asia survey was to the numbers that are reflected on our screens.
baka we can look at the matchups. I know it's a little bit early, pero more or less we already have almost 50% or approaching 50% of the results, the partial unofficial results. Yung matchups ng there you go. Senators. Gentlemen, Professor Contreras, I hope you can see us on your screen. Ronald, of course.
Yes,
you can see us
I do.
here. Yeah. This is something we like to do as part of an exercise. Kung manalo ang isang pangulo, kung siya manalo bilang pangulo, saan mapupunta yung mga senador? Sa administration, sa opposition, o sa swing? Now, I'd like to solicit your assistance here in telling me where the possible potential winners will go. The winners as well as yung mga incumbent na meron pang natitirang taon doon sa Senado. So for example, again, this is still theoretical. If it's Bongbong Marcos who gets to sit in Malacanang, that's an if. Where does Cynthia Villar go? I suppose sa administration. Tama ho ba?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay, let's bring her in there. What about Grace Po?
admin yan.
Admin din. Ronald, admin din?
They will, the problem here, that they will choose admin because for them to chair good committees.
That's also true. There's also the chairmanship to talk about. But ikaw, what do you think?
Well, baka mag-independent si Grace, no? Depende kung anong plano niya sa 2028.
That's
No?
another
Ikalawa ay kahit kasi nasa minority ka, makakakuha ka pa rin ng mga key committees eh. Baka nga mas marami
Dahil
kang
konti lang naman kayo.
baka nga mas marami kang makuha kung kakaunti lang kayo. No? Baka yun yung isang
Nakakapagod.
yun yung isang
Nakakapagod pag minority ka na mag-isa sa Senado kasi lahat ng committee member ka.
Okay, that's also true.
Yeah.
Because the minority has to be represented
Yes.
in all the
So,
committees.
kaya ibabalansin niya yan, no?
Okay. So would it be fair to place, for example, Grace Po sa swing?
Probably.
Oops, sorry. Okay, where did you go? We go back to matchups. Yeah, senators. Okay, go back to Bongo Marcos. So, of course, Bongo, I suppose, goes to admin. Tell me if I'm doing this right. What about Pia Cayetano?
Well,
Admin din.
miyembro siya ng Nationalista Party.
Which is?
No? Which is admin. Pero siyempre, may kaunting dynamics yan with Bongbong Marcos because of yung naging bakbakan ni Alan Peter
Yes.
noong 2016.
Actually, Ed, I think the question there is it's going to be the Senate President.
Okay.
Because the way our Congress, the Senate operates is that if your vote is for the Senate President, majority, then you belong to the majority coalition.
Yes, sir.
Because the Senate is not organized according to majority parties. They're organized to majority and minority. So sino ba ang tatakbo sa Senate President at sino buboto laban sa kanya? Kasi yung buboto sa laban sa kanya, yun ang magiging minority senator.
Okay. Well, sige, let me try to simplify this na lang. Let's do a reset. Among the incumbents and among the potentials sa Senate, sino ang malabang tatakbo sa Senate presidency? That, I suppose, will be easier.
Si Amy Marcos.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, good point.
Yeah, is that consensus?
Baka mag-vice
That's
kay
possible.
Baka mag-vice kay Sara.
Parang may gusto ka sabihin. Vice Kisar.
Dahil mukhang geared si Sara na tumakbo sa 2028.
Pero matagal pa yun. Dito muna tayo sa 2022.
Yeah.
Sige.
Ano
Sino pa?
connected din yan eh.
Before we go back to check the numbers, baka mamaya nagbabago ng numbers eh. Sino pa ang
So,
pwedeng...
ang mga posible dyan magtakbo pagka-senador na presidente, si Amy, baka si Cynthia Villar,
Cynthia?
baka si Bongo.
Really? Bongo? For the presidency, Senate presidency.
Senate presidency.
Sa possible winners, meron ba rito mukhang magbabalak o hindi naman?
Si Win Gatchalian, tapos na yung term niya sa 2028. No? Kaya mag-a-aspire yan, either president or vice.
Parang last shot.
Oo.
Parang
Si
last shot.
Win Gatchalian.
Okay. Win. There you go.
Baka si Alan Cayetano.
Yeah, actually, si Alan Cayetano kasi
Ambisyon.
people were expecting him to make a bid for higher office in 2022. So baka dito siya mapunta.
Senate president.
So, anybody else? Si Mark Villar. Kung hindi si Nanay, hindi kaya?
Pwede.
Diba?
Pwede.
That's also a potential. O baka si Robin Padilla. Hindi naman.
Wag naman.
I'm just playing with options. Yun. So, these are potential, kumbaga, Senate President candidates that we can possibly keep an eye out on. Bok, sige, let's go back to Baka,
Yes,
sir,
we actually have an update, sir.
We might have an update.
Kung
There is a
presidente
request.
kasi si Bongbong, baka mag-hesitate naman sila na yung Senate President kapatid.
Yes. Meron ding may optics din yan eh.
Oo.
Gentlemen, we now have Marcos with 17.5 million votes. Lenny Robredo with 8.3. So parang more or less pareho pa rin yung mga margins that we are looking at. Manny Pacquiao still with number 3 at 1.4 million. Isko with 1.1. Ping Lacson with 500,000. And Mangondato with 66. Okay, and Montemayor with 30,000.
And that is with 53.5% or 57,000. Sorry?
A little more than half
Yep.
of the precincts.
57,669 precincts have already been transmitted.
Okay. Ano Bok, you wanna look at the senators? Baka nagbago yung ranking?
Let's check our senators. Still similar to what we had earlier with Robin Padilla, Loren Legarda, Rafi Tulfo, Win Gatchalian, Cheese Escudero, Mark Villar, Alan Peter Cayetano, Joel Villanueva, Mig Zubiri, Risa Ontiveros, JV Ejercito, and Jinggoy Estrada rounding out the top 12. Just outside is Herbert Bautista and Jojo Minay with Gibo Chodoro.
So more or less, no change. But I'd like to ask our gentleman guests here, and Reg, baka may gusto kang ano dyan. What if we look at the local races naman? Kasi usually ang local races, maaga pupasok yung mga detalye, yung mga results.
Yeah.
Anong local race na gusto yung makita? Makati, Quezon City, for
Quezon
example.
City.
Would you want to see Quezon City? Here, Bok. QC going down. Okay. So far, we have...
Yep.
Runaway winner.
For Mayor
Oops, bumalik. Sorry, we'll go back again there. Ano lang, local, mayor, and go back to Quezon City. Okay, there you go.
now, Mayor Joy Belmonte with 491,603. And trailing her is Mike Defensor, Congressman Mike Defensor, with 311,211 votes.
So Joy Belmonte so far getting 60% of the votes in Quezon City, with Mike Defensor getting 38.24%. Meron kayong...
Manila, what about Manila?
Manila. Okay, Bok.
Medyo maganda rin ang laban sa Manila.
Lacuna. Bok.
Malayo.
Ani Lacuna leading with 451,612. Sinundan ni Alex Lopez with 141,284. And Amado Bagatsing with 95,699. Christy Lim only with 12,421 votes so far.
And pwede mag-request kasi self-interest ko. Laguna, my province.
Yes, sir.
Makikita ba ang Laguna dyan?
What's your province?
Local.
Laguna.
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 Let's look at Laguna. Laguna?
Yeah.
A specific municipality?
Yeah, Laguna lang, province.
Laguna.
Province.
Baka ano, Bok, governor. Tama ba?
Governor.
Governor.
Alright.
Okay, Laguna. Ramil Hernandez.
611,435, followed by Sol Aragones with 445,338.
That's 57% versus 41%. If you gentlemen don't mind, gusto kong tingnan yung Pasig kasi natatanda ko yung...
But Ed, since
yung
you're
vote
on
na
that
nakataas
page already, tingnan
Hindi ko.
natin Ilocos Norte.
Ilocos Norte. Yeah.
Ayan, yan, Ilocos Norte.
Okay,
There you
no
go.
surprises there either.
Landslide so far, Matthew Manotoc, the incumbent governor, with 193,856. Trailing him is Rudy Fariñas with 69,088 votes.
Any
Ito
surprises
na
there?
sabi interesting about the Sun. So, congressman, si Sandro,
Si
ba yan?
Sandro.
first district yata yun ng Ilocos Norte.
Let's take a look. Ano, Bok? Let's take a look at... hindi ko lang alam kung meron tayo nung
You
ganun
can
ano
just search for it, sir, yeah.
Sige, Bok.
Province?
Congressman.
Ilocos...
Nasa
Norte.
website niyo ba to?
Sir?
Naka-upload ba yung graphics niyo sa website?
Hindi yata eh. But you know,
Forget lang sa-
you just tell us your request. We will look it up here for you.
Ito yung marami na sa akin nag-text eh. Itanong mo naman to.
Okay. Sir, it's broken down into districts so we can't give you that number.
Yeah,
just
okay,
yet.
it's okay.
Sige. Well, sir, I'm afraid we have to...
Sila Robin na.
Yeah,
Pinapa-wrap na po kami.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I suppose that's it for now. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you very much, Regina, for staying with us all this time. And, interesting night.
It has been a very interesting night, and still a lot more results to count and a lot more to keep an eye on. Stay tuned here on One News as we continue to cover the 2022 national elections. We will continue the latest breakdown of votes and deep dive analyses. Your next anchors will be Robbie Alampay, Gretchen Ho, and Mon Isberto. We are One News. This is Bilang Pilipino 2022.
All sides, all the time.